Okay, good evening, everyone. It's 7 o'clock, so we will call this town council meeting to order. First item on the agenda, we have a public hearing this evening. The public hearing is for the 2019 Community Development Block Grant. So I will turn it over to the town manager to introduce the topic, and then we will open up the public hearing. Mr. Manager?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is similar to the grant that we applied for and was successful last year. Certainly, we're going to have the Director of the Housing Authority up in a second to talk about it. But as you know, with our housing areas that we have in Southington and the units that we have, they're relatively old and need to be updated. So currently, working closely with the Housing Authority, they've been applying for grants to do just that. We just are in the process of doing the kitchens over up on Pleasant Street, and I'll invite the Director of the Housing Authority to say what our plans are for this next grant.
Good evening, everybody.
Good evening. Put the mic in front of you.
Good evening, everybody, and thank you for inviting me.
Thank you for being here tonight. We appreciate it.
Thank you. First, I'd like to start off, I'd like to update the 2018 CDBG grant. The assistance agreement was signed and sent back to the town in February. We had our mandatory pre-bid meeting this past Thursday to review the project. We had 7 contractors who attended the walkthrough. The sealed bids are due on Thursday, April 4th at 2 p.m. at the 43 Academy Street, our home office, is when we'll be opening up those bids. Scope of work, again, to remind you, is the electrical upgrades in all units, front and door replacements, mailboxes, new siding. 2 of the 6 handicap units will be remodeled to be ADA compliant, and the community room will also be getting a full remodel, and that will also be ADA compliant, the kitchen and the bathrooms in the community room. I'm here tonight to ask the town council to please approve a Phase 2 grant application to be submitted on behalf of the Southington Housing Authority in the amount of $800,000. We have procured through the town Peter Testa from A&E Services Group as our consultant for the grant application for 500 Pleasant Street. On the scope of work for the 2019 grant, we are looking at all kitchen upgrades, including appliances in all the apartments, remodel 2 more of the handicap units, and replace the generator in the community room building. Again, this grant would be a great benefit to help increase the sustainability for the Southington Housing Authority. According to our 2013 needs assessment, over the next 12 years, we will need to spend approximately $4.8 million to do all the upgrades at our 4 properties. The state has instructed us to increase our reserves and income. The Housing Authority has taken great pride in keeping its units in good shape while keeping rents as low as possible. However, in 2017, CHFA denied our budget as it found rents to be too low and the inability to sustain our properties with the revenues we were generating and keeping up with our needs assessment.
Wow.
Per CHFA, just to give you an idea, each unit costs us roughly $400 a month. Right now, we are currently averaging about $375 a month for rents. Under CHFA direction, we have had to raise our base rents, update our leases and policies to help us build our reserves for future project needs for our 4 properties, current properties. That's all I have for.
Okay, are there any questions from the council members? Mr. Ricchio?
On the upgrades on the interior, what are your floor surfaces currently?
I'm sorry, can you repeat?
The floor surfaces in your units, what are they?
They're 12 by 12 tile. Some units have carpet over the tile.
Ceramic or vinyl or?
Just vinyl, 12 by 12.
And what's the
VCP.
proposed going to be?
The proposal for the 2 handicap units is to abate those apartments. Some have carpet vinyl mix. So we're going to be abating those 2 units. And because they were, the mastic tested hot for, asbestos to glue.
Mm-hmm. And what's the new finish?
I'm sorry?
The new finish
It'll
floor?
be VCT.
Okay.
We're going to go back down with VCT.
And how about countertops?
Countertops are going to be the probably the Cornip type, not not gonna be your Home Depot brand. It's
Not Formica or
Formica, no.
a solid surface?
Yeah,
Okay.
solid.
Okay.
I
Thank
have
you.
one question.
Sure. Councilwoman Morrissey?
So we have 4 properties. Can you tell me about how many units are total over those 4 properties?
Yeah, we have 180 units total. Pleasant Street is the largest property, has 60 units. The other 3 properties have 40 units.
And how many units are we touching with this phase 2?
Phase 2, you're touching them all.
All of them?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yes.
Mr. Ricchio?
Yeah, I know there's been a lot of talk recently about the number of people on our waiting list. Can you kind of enlighten the community as to, on that waiting list, how many are current Southington residents?
Excuse me, Mr. Ricchio, that's actually on the agenda tonight, so we separated it so that we don't confuse that with the public hearing. But that's
Perfect.
actually a presentation tonight.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Is there any other questions related to the public hearing at this point? Okay, so we'll open the microphone to any Southington resident if you'd like to speak. This is, again, directly related to the public hearing, which is a community development block grant. The microphone is open if any resident would like to speak. Okay. Again, any resident would like to speak related to the community development block grant? Okay, last call. Okay, I will close this public hearing, and we will now move on to our regular meeting. So, Madam Clerk, if you please call the roll.
Michael Ricchio.
Present.
Victoria Triano.
Here.
John Barry.
Here.
William Diedzik.
Here.
Tom Lombardi.
Here.
Don Maselli.
Present.
Kelly Morrissey.
Here.
Christopher Poulos.
Here.
Christopher Palmieri.
Here. If we can stand, Vice Chair Maselli has the prayer.
Heavenly Father, open our eyes this evening to the truth and reality of every situation that we encounter. Give us solutions that are the best for our community now and in the future. Keep your hand upon Southington and continue to make her great. Amen.
Amen. And if I can ask Speaker Simowitz to lead us in the flag salute. Thank you very much. First item on the agenda now is the minutes, so I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion to approve the minutes.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Minutes are approved. Moving on to councilperson communications. Vice Chair Maselli?
Okay. So I want to speak a little bit about the Curtis open space parcel and the sewer line project that we've discussed the last couple of council meetings. I'm going to start from the beginning, so give me a few minutes here. As chairman of the Open Space Committee, I raised a red flag about 2 months ago on the planned sewer line project that's proposed for our Curtis open space parcel. I was concerned about the destruction of mature trees, the overall disruption of the land, and several of my council colleagues, and probably all of us if we had done a straw poll, agreed that there was concern. While I understand the need for the sewer line, the savings inherent with the original proposal that our town engineers designed, I nonetheless take my responsibility as the open space chairman very seriously, and mind you, I've served on this committee now for a decade. I may not have been involved directly with negotiations with the Curtis family. That was over a decade ago, if not maybe 2 decades ago. But I know from other open space discussions with local families that we as a community, and indeed this community's leaders, are entrusted with the stewardship of our open space parcels, no matter if it's tomorrow, next year, or 50 years from now. The perception when we purchase a property or when it's donated to the town for our open space program is that we will forever preserve the land, keep it intact, ensure that it remains free of development. Construction of any sort, be it on the surface or underground, would most certainly be frowned upon, in my opinion, by the original landowners. Thus, their willingness to forego those hefty sale prices and resolve instead to sell to the town at a much lower value. The Curtis property is no different. As soon as Mr. Curtis learned about the planned sewer line, he began to attend various committee meetings and spoke with town staff and others. He pulled out his copy of the deed and came before all of us here tonight to state his objection to the proposed project. After that, Mr. Curtis graciously met with myself and Town Manager Shota, and even invited me to walk the property with him, which I did this past weekend. It was myself, it was SOAR Committee Chairman Dave Zoney, it was Planning and Zoning Commissioner Jen Klock, it was Town Councilor John Barry, Kevin Curtis, who was our library chairman, Mr. Curtis. I think that was all that was with us. In the meantime, staff was sent back to the drawing board to come up with a design that did not impact mature trees and actually lends itself to a trail that was already delineated on the property. That's all a positive, and I am heartened that seemingly this will all work out. What I remain concerned about is the drama that unfolded over the past couple of months or so. I don't like the fact that it wasn't enough for a town councilor to raise a flag of concern. Instead, it required the original landowner to make a stink, quite frankly. That shouldn't be the case. In all likelihood, neither Mr. Curtis nor myself will be in this room 50 years from now. So I hope moving forward that we all take a page from this issue and do a better job at being the stewards of the very property that we and others before us were mindful to save from development and other disruptive occurrences. We have nearly 600 acres of open space in this town, and I, for one, am very proud at the initiative that we've taken to forever preserve our town's scenic beauty and natural resources. Moving forward, the SOAR Committee Chair and myself plan yet another walkthrough with Mr. Curtis and staff to mark 2 mature trees that we noticed this weekend that we would like to save. We're actually going to mark them somehow. The SOAR Committee will then take up this new proposal at its next meeting. After that, the proposal will come back to this board, and Councilman and Chairman Palmieri has agreed to have our town engineer come to that meeting and fully present the new proposal prior to our final vote on the matter. I just want to also, besides a gracious thank you to Mr. Curtis, who is a lovely gentleman and has such wonderful heritage, generations and generations of heritage on that property. I also want to thank resident Larry DiPaolo, who was also critical in helping us come up with this Plan B, so to speak. So I guess it really does take a village. So, yeah, any questions for that? Because that was a lot.
And just one thing, and I'll turn over to you in a second, Mike. And just a reminder to the whole council, once that plan is presented from the town engineer, it will come back to this body, and we'll have a formal vote so that all of us could have a say in what's being presented and proposed. So it will come back to the full council, as I said at the last meeting. So I want to make sure all of you are aware of that as well. Okay, Mr. Ricchio?
I have one comment. Amen.
And it'll be the Public Works Director, Mr. Chairman.
Oh,
Yeah,
sorry.
He'll be coming to do all this stuff.
Okay.
I
Eh,
have one.
Go ahead.
Were there any other questions on the Curtis property? No. Okay, so with regard to the Curtis property, I am just so interested in the fact that the foundation of the barn that had a trap door into a cellar and was used as part of the Underground Railroad, hundreds of years ago, is just adjacent to our open space parcel. And again, I've been speaking with Mr. Curtis and with others on this matter. Mr. Curtis was gracious enough to send me an Amazon book where the narrative is actually in this historic book about the Underground Railroad here in Connecticut, and the Southington branch is listed on it. But what's interesting is that we were contacted by someone who is familiar and works with the Connecticut Freedom Trail, and lo and behold, the Southington branch is not listed on that map. So I am proposing tonight, I'd like to form the Heritage Identity Study Committee as recommended in the Historic Resources Inventory Report that we all received. That was completed June 2017. I forget when we looked at it as a council, last year or a year and a half ago. And take a look at this site and many others in town, because quite frankly, we don't have all of our ducks in a row with some of this stuff. It needs to be properly delineated. That site isn't mentioned on the National Registry, and I'd like to gather some people who have knowledge and, credentials and whatnot, and people have already been saying, I would love to be involved, and I actually reached out to Planning and Zoning Commissioner Jen Klock and said, if we move forward with the study committee, I hope that you'll be a part of it, and she graciously accepted the invitation. Because we want to make sure that all of our historic parcels are properly delineated and forever preserved. We have a lot of good in this town, and I want to make sure that our Southington branch is on the Connecticut Freedom Trail.
Thank you, and it's important that we do adhere to the recommendations made in that initial report. So what we can do is the next meeting, we'll put that on under appointments
Okay.
to officially appoint the committee.
Okay.
Okay? Any other council? Mr.
Yes,
Ricchio?
I'm
Oh,
sorry, go
sorry.
No, go ahead, Mickey.
I just wanted to say that we are proceeding, a subcommittee was formed to look at diversity and equity within our community. I know that the Board of Education and Mr. Cannellan had a meeting. We, on the part of the council, will be having a meeting on April 25th. I'm still trying to figure out the venue. I'll talk with Mark and Laura about it. It will be open, and the public will be invited to speak. Our mandate and our charge will be to examine our local policies and procedures about training, about diversity training, and also within our departments, police, fire, town management, and all of that. And also, I am hoping to get someone from the ACLU and to just talk about where do we go from here. It is just a time to look at our policy and to see if we need to do something better. And then I'll come back, and certainly everyone on the council would be invited, and I would hope you would come just for that meeting, and then we go from there. We're going to go very slowly, Mr. Chairman, because it's just, we want to really explore where are we in all of this, and perhaps it ends there. If we're providing the right training and all, but perhaps there's another step. So we are moving forward. As I said, the first meeting will be in April 25th. It's a Thursday night, and we'll be meeting at 7 o'clock. Just the venue, we're still trying to figure out the venue. But there are members of the public. There are educators going to be there. The department heads, I hope, will make opportunity for them to come and give a report, or their designee, and we'll see where we are and where we're going. And as I said, I'm only speaking for this meeting. It will be open, and the public will give us, we will give the public an opportunity to speak, similar to what we do here, for a few minutes, 5 minutes or whatever. And there will be a portion of education also presented at that night. But I just wanted to give everybody an update where we are on that.
Okay. Mr. Lombardi?
Yes, similar topic, so thank you.
Oh.
Go ahead.
Is that okay?
Yep.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Morrissey?
Is there a agenda that will be posted for that? For the public to see?
Absolutely, absolutely. I'm just waiting for confirmation from certain people so we can get an agenda set up and that we can move forward. And so absolutely, there will be an agenda probably in the next week or so, I would think, once we get everything settled, and we know what we're doing, and we finally get confirmation from a few folks that are very critical.
Just want to make sure
So,
we're
yeah,
not FOI
absolutely.
issues.
No, not at all. It certainly will be there. Thank you, Mr.
Vice Chair
Chairman.
Maselli?
Yeah, one more thing, Ms. Triano, that is the same night as the Chamber of Commerce annual dinner. So, just wanted to let you know that.
Thank you for sharing that. Perhaps we'll reconsider. Right now, that's where it's earmarked there, but we'll take it under advisement, talk to the committee members and see what they all feel too. So.
Well, I'm curious, who is on the committee?
Well,
I just said to Mr. Palmieri, I said, well, mine has to go on the agenda next time for this study committee, but have we talked about who's on this committee?
yes, actually, in our next meeting, I can give you the whole layout, but I have an administrator from the East Hartford school system who's had to deal with this situation for many years. I've invited Dory Conlon to come. All of the department heads will be invited to come, the town manager, and we're really just exploring what we have right now. That's what I want to do. I want to make sure that there isn't some gaping hole.
Right.
I want to make sure that the training is ongoing. And then with everyone joining together, looking at where would we go next to explore things? If we find a deficit or if we find somewhere where we can improve, then we go forward from there.
Right.
Okay?
Yeah,
I don't know if that really answered the question. Is there a real committee? Or
Yeah, I
is
mean,
it
how,
just-
where did this go through the chair? I mean, how did
Yes, it
you,
was public.
Can I interject for a second?
Sure.
They're dealing with certain issues on here with specific children under the age of 18. So I understand everyone's angst to make this all public, et cetera, et cetera. But in the current state, it's my understanding, I believe my wife's on the committee, that there are specific, but they're related. So there's specific things in the school part of it that have to be dealt with. So if things are being shared amongst the two, I think we need to take it easy and go one step at a time.
Yeah,
But if the superintendent's involved in both issues, then we got to go slow.
yeah. Well, I wouldn't be having the superintendent come. They're having their own meetings.
I understand that.
And this was discussed back about a month and a half ago.
Yeah, I mean, there was no formal committee
Yeah,
formed,
well,
but
we'll review the minutes, Mr. Chairman, if you wish to do so. But at that time, I suggested it, and you said that's a good idea, and I.
and that was the end of the discussion. So
Right.
we can talk about that in the
Good.
future. But Mr. Lombardi was patiently waiting.
I just have,
Hold on one second, Mr.
Well,
Lombardi.
well,
Okay.
Councilman Barry has a question on.
yeah, on
Go ahead.
Councilwoman Triano. So is this the same committee that Mr. Lombardi was?
No, Mr. Lombardi.
Okay, so this isn't a Board of Ed committee?
No, not at all. It
Okay.
has to do with the town side of the issue.
Okay.
And just to look at training issues and
Okay.
see what is available and where we are, and of course, reporting back to the.
Okay. And I know there's been controversy, rightfully or wrong, I don't know all the details, in terms of accessibility by the press. Will the committee you're referring to have accessibility to the press or not?
Yes,
Oh, okay.
Because we're really, my vision for it is that we're really not talking about specific individuals. We're looking really at our policies and procedures within the community. And if we're all set, if our policies are in order and it might just be one meeting. But if there are areas that we can do better in, then let's talk about it. And of course, everybody would be involved in this. It's not some sort of an I committee. It will be open for everyone to talk about. I think it's just, there were, the controversy that ensued on this thing a couple of months ago. And I think it's important that we as a council take the leadership on this and take a look. So let's see what we find. That's all.
Go ahead, Mr. Lombardi.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to update the council on the meeting that I attended on March 18th, which is similar, some of us have alluded to it. I attended the Southington Public Schools Coalition for Social Justice. It was the first meeting that was planned for a long time. And I think it's important for us to point out that this is actually, even though we use the term interchangeably, this was not put on by the Board of Education. It was actually spearheaded by Superintendent of Schools, Tim Cannellan. So it was the first meeting. It was students were involved, parents, staff of the Southington school system, and moderators from the CERC group, which is the State Education Resource Center. It was really a fantastic evening. It was the first meeting, and one of the newspapers came out and which is not the first time, accused this council of an illegal meeting, right? And we all know how many of us responded the first time that came out. And as I did that first time, I will stand up for the council when there was nothing wrong with what went on. I did speak with Superintendent of Schools, Tim Cannellan, about my concerns, and as Mr. Barry stated, maybe should this be open to the public? They have a reason for it not to be open to the public because of personal issues and personal stories that are being told. I did run the issue by the town attorney, who responded to me, and I thank her for that. And the Board of Education's legal counsel also gave an opinion on the matter. So, if anyone on the council has an issue with it not being open to the public or the council, let myself know or superintendent of schools know. I'm sure we'd be happy to sit down with you, or if there's any member of the public who has an issue, we'd be certainly happy to discuss the superintendent would be happy to explain in full length the rationale behind it. So that's what I'll say about the meeting. And I don't believe that it's going to be closed to the public and the media forever. I just think as this thing gets going, that was the intent of the group. But I will certainly keep this council updated on what goes on at the meetings, because I think it's very important that at least the council be aware of the positive things that are going on to counter some of the negative things that we live with in our society. So are there any questions on that meeting?
I do. Thank you for serving on it. My understanding, and I don't know all the answers, but my understanding was this was formed by the superintendent, but you're telling me that it was not formed by the superintendent of schools.
No, it was.
Okay, so it was formed by the superintendent of schools, but
It
it's...
was not formed by the Board of Education. It was formed by the superintendent of schools and the assistant superintendent of schools. And the chairman of the Board of Ed is here tonight, and if he could
Well, that's
verify
fine. I don't know all the details. I know there was a lot of criticism concerning the private event that was held by the Women of Progress, and there was some concerns about press accessibility to these very important subjects. So I would be on the record, from the information that I know now, I don't know all the details that you're referring to because I'm not a member of the committee, Mr. Lombardi, but the fact of the matter is, I would hope all the meetings are open to the press, because I think transparency on this issue is crucial for us to move forward as a community. Private meetings, closed-door sessions on subjects like this, I don't really know the benefit. I don't know anything about what's going on. No one knows what's really going on because they're closed. So I'd just be on the side of caution in terms of having public accessibility, meaning the press allowed to attend. So that would be just my public view on that. If there are some issues of why the press cannot attend a meeting that was formed by the superintendent of schools, I guess I'd be open to hear the reasons. But as of today, I've not heard compelling reasons why they should be closed to the public.
And Mr. Berry, I will agree with you publicly, but I will also say that this issue is too important to not have a council member at the table.
No, I'm happy that there's a council member at the table. I'm not suggesting that there shouldn't be. I'm glad you're there.
Okay.
I just think it should be open to the press.
Mr. Ricchio?
Okay, thank you. I believe the compelling reason, which I've already stated, is the fact that, well, let's talk about two separate things. The Women in Progress, if anybody asked them, they would tell you that one of the reasons why they didn't want the press there is because they wanted the politicians there. And the problem you get when politicians show up in a room, Republican, Democrat, or Independent, doesn't matter, you get political grandstanding. They don't want that. There's an issue in this community that needs to be dealt with, and they're not saying they're opposed to it forever, but they want to have genuine, open dialogue and discussion without cameras rolling, because personalities change when the cameras turn on. That's the reason for them. That's what I was told by them. I understand that, and it sounds logical to me. Number two, the issue of the committee that was formed by the superintendent of schools is similar. In that aspect, in order to get to the bottom, in order to solve the problem, you have to start. It has to get ugly, and you have to bear it all. And in order to bear it all, you have to have discussions and conversations with the kids. And 99 or 100% of the kids that they want to have discussions with are juveniles. And that is not to be published on television or in the newspaper. It's that simple. Let that happen. No one's trying to hide anything from anybody. Let it happen. Let the discussions start. And when they have something fruitful that they can share with the community without offending anybody's legal rights, then they'll have that. I don't see what the big deal is. No one's trying to hide anything. We have all the leaders in our community serve on this committee. All of them. There's one right here. He's not trying to hide anything. My wife's not trying to hide anything. The superintendent of schools for sure isn't trying to hide anything. There's no secrets.
Any other councilman communication? Any other council member? I just have one. I'd like to acknowledge and thank Pamela DiPaolo from DiPaolo Furnitures. She donated a very nice upright piano to DiPaolo Middle School, probably valued at about $3,000. So, Pamela, I'd like to thank you for your donation. Very kind of you. She would love to have used it herself, but didn't need that. So, felt the best place was to donate to the school system. So I just want to acknowledge and thank you.
One more, on another light note.
Okay.
It's the end of winter, and I know we have potholes to fill and all that, but I think as a general community, we could be thankful under the leadership, and I think I saw her here somewhere. Oh, there she is, Annette Turnquist. Hi, Annette. Our highway department, our parks part, we wake up every day after a snowstorm, after the leaves are all mixed in with the snow, and it's done. You know, it's not 100% done, but our guys that we employ and our subcontractors do an amazing job in Southington as compared to a lot of communities that surround us. And so I just wanted to say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. We can give them a round of applause too. Sure. Thank you. So if we could move on to reports and discussions. First item we have is a report from Malone and McBroom. So this is the work that the Farm Heritage Committee has been working on. So at this point, I'll turn it over to my co-chair of the Farm Heritage Committee, Ed Pocock, to kick off the presentation.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman. Pleasure to be here. I'm very excited that there's this much interest in Farm Heritage tonight. We have the Speaker of the House showed up, Senator Sampson, several other former senators and representatives. I know this is a big issue for the state of Connecticut, and I think it's a good thing for us actually, given all the stuff that's going on. It's great to highlight something I believe that we've been doing very right in the town of Southington from an initiative. I'd like to thank, for this report that came through, my fellow committee members, my co-chair, Mr. Palmieri, Mr. Goralski, the chair of the Board of Ed, serves on the committee. Also, who's not here is Mr. Myers, who was part of this right up until the very end, and of course he departed, and now he's living somewhere else. And of course we got Mr. Pooler, who's on our committee now, after Mr. Myers did all the heavy lifting. We've told him that. This report is long in coming. It's been promised for some time, but we wanted to get it right. There was a lot of discussion went into it. Even to who we contracted with. Malone and McBroom is a great company. They did, if anybody who's ever walked around Slopers and seen the planning that's gone on there, it's been phenomenal. They're just a great group to work with. Mike Doherty and Tom Scheel will be making the presentation tonight from Malone and McBroom, and I'd like to just thank everybody for it's a good night to be here to see this. It's a little bonus.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you for having us here to give a presentation on the master plans for the Farm Heritage Committee. I think the overall message that we would start with is farming is very cool, and it's never been out of favor in Connecticut, but it's growing amongst the young folks are coming back into it. And you have taken the lead in these two properties. You have important farming properties in the town, and you have contracted with us to perform master plans to talk really about what's happening in 4 phases related to these properties. Number 1 is preservation. Number 2 is conservation. Number 3 is farm development. And number 4 is education. Those are all rolling into what's happening with Grosky Farm, Pleasant View Farm, and what's happening for the growth of the community. So what we did is we looked at the properties. We worked very closely with John and Ed and Chris and Brian, and spent time looking at the properties, performing inventory analysis, understanding the history of what's really happened on the properties, and prepared concepts, prepared some costs, talked with the committee, walked through them with the various options, developed budget estimates. Now we will go over that really quickly, and I hope to spend just about 10 minutes just giving you a brief introduction to the report, and then see where you'd like to go from there. So the easiest thing to do is try and give you just a little background on Grosky. Let's do Grosky first. If I can figure out how to advance and bingo. Okay, so Grosky, the first part of Grosky, I want to give you just 6 little pictures of the property itself, and it's located at the corner of East Street and Berlin Street, Route 364, prominent 3.4 acre piece of property. It's got some slope to it, and the first part of the master plan has been implemented. This is the farm stand at the corner, which was before Ed and his group got through with volunteer basis of restoring and reconstructing the farm stand. Right next to the farm stand, of course, is the open lawn where the Grosky homestead was taken down. It's now lawn surrounded by maple trees. You can see in the background the barn. The barn is the focus of the master plan. It was studied by Public Works. We evaluated different options, whether to save the barn or take it down. We'll go through what we decided to do with the barn. In front of the barn on East Street is a paddock, which is used. We have plans for that area. As you look up from the farm stand and past the lawn area in the barn, it's very beautiful. You know, it's a meadow. And it's farmed. It's hayed. And you know, when you go to the top of the hill, you look down right through the hayfield. You can see the trees and what's happening with some properties around. Small property, but very valuable, and it's used for haying right now. So the idea is, what would be a good guideline for master planning the future of Grosky property? And always remember, when we talk about the master plans, it's a vision and it's a guideline and it's living, it's for the future. Okay, so it's subject to change, but I know you won't be able to really get into all the detail on really what's happening here, so I'll just outline a little bit of what it is. You know, when we talked about the photos, and the north is up, and in the bottom right is Berlin Street and East Street. The little red spot, that's the farm stand. And then above it to the north in green is our paddock areas. And that paddock area, the larger one, is where the barn is located right now. We have gone through evaluations and determined that it's probably the right thing to do to take that barn down. That's going to be tied to Pleasant View. Okay, so we're going to talk about Pleasant View and what's happening there, because we want to do a barn there. The hay that's stored there ultimately, and the whole connectivity of what's happening with the farming, would be planned to go over to Pleasant View. So that is a planning process as part of what's happening with master planning. So you really want a guideline to what's best for the community. So that's what we're deciding to do as a committee and as designers, to recommend for the barn. But now over to the dark green, which is the larger piece. That's not just the hay field, et cetera. There's some other things going on, because there's a dark band on the bottom. That's some trees, so we would expand a little bit of the farming venture to make a little bit more available for the haying. We have a loop trail going around that with the options for doing different things along the walking trail. It's about 1,100 feet, nice for the community. Integrate that with a winter use, which we could do a sledding hill for the community down the slope towards the upper left part of the map, which is the northwest. But focusing really on what's happening with the paddocks, with the farm stand, put a formal parking area in there. Small amount of parking is available in there now. Not grow it greatly, but get it nicely set up. Get a nice feeling for the entry with stone and landscaping to greet you in it. Preserve the sugar maple trees. We talked about, would it be possible to do some sugaring there? There's really not that many trees there, but there are some big trees there. And bring in perhaps beekeeping on here. Have the paddocks available for either historic demonstrations of equipment, demonstration gardens, flower gardens, vegetable gardens to support the farm stand itself, and really develop it as an even greater community asset for you to have the young folks come over, experience it. You're leasing that field for the haying, and go right ahead and keep doing that on this property. So it's a fairly simple plan, but it gives you a guideline for the future. And we'll go through the costs on that once we go through Pleasant View. But let me spend some minutes talking with you about Pleasant View. and some pictures. So take a look at this beautiful scenario of the 7-acre Pleasant View property right next to DePaulo School on Pleasant Street opposite Hobart. So that's 7 acres, and that's the spring clearing and ready for planting as we look from Pleasant Street to the I guess it would be to the east. And of course, once the planting takes hold, you have the croplands coming up. This is the adjacent look towards DePaulo, which is very important because this section of the property are the school plots right next to DePaulo. And if I had better sight, I could tell you that I can see the bicycles and the walkway and the sidewalks and the connectivity to DePaulo. So that's very exciting to build on from the point of view of master planning, what's going to happen on Pleasant View. And then when you turn around, you look back where the car is, there's a small parking area there. Now, historically, this was always farm, but there was a lot of action going on with more recently with horse paddocks, and there were structures here. And I don't know exactly what year the town took the buildings down, but the site is now cleared. There are some trees available on the site that we want to save, but it's got a very pleasant setting. We spent time talking to the school, to the VOAG program. We talked with Mark Ramsey from Lewis Farm. He's been the contract farmer on the property to date. Okay, and he was very helpful. And he gave us some tips about what's really what the land needs. And so when we talked about what was happening, we're going to talk about phases of improvements, and it's all dedicated towards farming, promoting farming, and giving you, the community, opportunities for farm incubation, the farm-to-table planning, the organic nature of what's really happening with the growth, giving your young folks possibly an opportunity to get in here, learn about farming before they spread their wings and go to a larger site. So we have 4 specific plots set up on this master plan. They're a little over acre in size. We have a circulation system of gravel drives around. That's all to the right where the large squares are. But in the front is the frontage on Pleasant Street, and on the bottom is DePaulo School. So north is up if you need to get oriented. Now, what we thought we'd do is develop not just the idea of farm incubation fields, but we would tie this into the schools. So the 2 small rectangles in the bottom left are school plots. We have trellis, farming trellises set up in storage buildings associated with that for teaching. Above that, you'll see a little gray area, small parking. You don't have to do a lot of parking here. You have DePaulo School. People can park there and walk across. But the big building is a 4,000 square foot barn, which would be new. And that would be a 2-story. It would have a gambrel look. Ed was really interested in the look of the barn. We're doing the master planning, so we're not really getting into the actual physical design, but we're shaping the space for you. And on both sides would be structures planned. To the right would be an open air pavilion, and above and to the left would be what we want to call an education resource center. So the vision would be to have a 2,000 square foot building dedicated to training farmers. Your young folks coming in, the offices and meeting rooms available for the incubator programs. There's a lot of that available online that is very successful coming out of all of the Northeast region. New York is very, very heavily invested in this. And you can bring these folks in and get programs set up on your incubator fields that can really, really generate a lot of interest in the community, getting these kids and young folks, not just kids, but young folks, excited about having farming as a career. Now, we also have community gardens sprinkled in amongst those buildings, a public outdoors gathering space, and we want to tie the barn into some available use for linkage with VOAG and animal husbandry. So the idea would not be to bring animals here permanently, because that would be too expensive to staff the barn and to keep the animals there, but they do have animals that they would bring in, have the space available for animal husbandry educational programs as part of this farm program, and would be a paddock area available for them. So this is a comprehensive program that requires some initial phasing. The initial phasing would require improving the fertilization of the fields. They do need composting. They need water. We'd like to bring public water to these fields. And Mark was very helpful, saying, if you really want to have this where you can really, shine with it, you got to do a few basic things. So there's money associated with that. And so what we did is we generated some project budgets for the two pieces. And I want to also, when we talk about budgets, it's very sensitive with the dollars and where does the money come from. We are generally conservative with our budgets. We always have a big contingency in there, as much as 25%. And we don't take into account goodwill, which is what would happen with town forces coming in, volunteer forces. So for instance, Ed and his group actually built the farm stand, so there's really no cost for the farm stand to the town. But for Grosky, we were projecting a cost of about $250,000 for those improvements, and with the contingency, it went up to about $300,000. And we thought that as you plan through that could be broken into its own particular elements and phases. But you do have that as an operating farm that can you can work with that on that's a small scale cost. But this cost for Pleasant View would be much more substantial. So that was broken into 4 phases, but the overall cost for Pleasant View was coming in around 1.9 million, and then we added in the contingency to bring it up to about two and a quarter million. So that's expensive. So we broken into phases for you to review. The first phase would be that infrastructure. So you would want to get the soils fertilized, bring the compost in, bring the strength of the soils up, bring the water line in. Do some of the things associated with the school. Get the school going with the trellis structures and walkways and gravel drives for the fields themselves. So there's some money associated with that, about $300,000. And then the second phase, we're guiding you towards the pavilion, getting the outdoor spaces ready for you, the walkways and the gardens, putting in about a little less than $200,000 for that. The big phase would be the barn. How that gets done, that's a vision, very expensive. We've got $1 million into the third phase, which is really getting that up and rolling for you in fine fashion. So that will be a heavy cost for the community, but it's an investment in your future. This is what you're talking about, your future. And then the fourth phase, that gets into, can we do the environmental resource center, the education center for farming? That is expensive too. We budgeted about $600,000 just for that building, 2,000 square foot building, but that would be a full service building. So it does add up, but it's a guide. And it's exciting. It's an investment in the future. It's an investment in your community. And we hope that you have a good reaction to the plan, and that we can continue to develop it as we have with Sloper, for instance, because we began with Mark and John back in 1998 with Sloper, and we continue to this day with the master plan there. So we think of this as a long-term relationship and a long-term planning program that you take one step at a time. So with that, I know you've got other things on your plate here, but I will be happy to answer any questions. Or certainly Brian. It's been great working with Brian, Ed, Chris, and John, and now Mark Pooler. We're a tremendous group of people.
So just for the council's sake, it's not on for action tonight because you were just presented to it tonight. At the next meeting, we'll hopefully take action. The action we're looking for is just approval of the conceptual plan. It's a long-range plan, living, breathing document. It's not anything that's finite in any given year, and as we all know, there's nothing in the budget set up for this. So, for example, as Tom mentioned, one of the first issues we wanted to do on the Grosky farm was rebuild the farm stand. So we got donated services. Thank you, Mr. Pocock, again, for donating all his services to build that farm stand at zero cost to the taxpayers. So we could be looking for grants, we could be looking for donations to tackle these one at a time. But they are phased so that we're not tackling everything at once. And as I mentioned, there's nothing in the budget that's before the Board of Finance right now for these projects. But we did want to maintain the farm heritage on these two sites, and we felt this was a responsible way to do that. So next meeting, we'll put it on for action just to approve the conceptual plan. But with that, are there any questions?
Yeah, may I just ask a question? I know you mentioned community gardens. On both properties, will there be community gardens available?
Yes.
Okay, Mike Carabin had called me, and that was his thought also, that it would be great to have
A
that.
lot of ability to do that, so that'd be tremendous.
Yeah, that'd be.
And they'd be set up differently on Negroski, a little bit more rural in its sense of having just a nice fencing around, paddock fencing. It'd be kind of nice to do something a little bit with the heritage of stone walls in Connecticut and frame the community gardens with stone walls on
Right.
Pleasant View. So we have that kind of
Thank
look.
you. I'll give him a call tomorrow. He'll be very pleased, I'm sure.
Okay, thank you.
One real quick thing on that. You mentioned community gardens. I just about everybody that serves on this council is aware of the one they have on East Street. So there's community gardens available.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You know, so I know, I saw the look on your face, and I said, I got to get up and tackle that one, because it's a problem down there now. So, I mean, we already have space available that's been dedicated to that.
And I did
That's right.
explain that to him about some of the issues that we've had there.
Right.
I think he felt it would be more conducive in these properties because of the water and what have you, on East Street. It's not there. So, but thank you very much. Yeah.
All right.
Are there any other Mr. Lombardi?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think
You're welcome.
before our next meeting, when we discuss this, I think we should also get a firm understanding of not only the capital costs, but what it's going to cost the town to maintain. We've had a lot of maintenance discussions over the last two meetings. So maintenance, I know probably what the Farm Heritage Group would say is that, well, we have a lot of volunteers, but the council should understand what kind of maintenance these properties will require going forward. So if tonight or at the next meeting, whatever.
And the timing's perfect. We have a meeting coming up this week, so that could be one of the things we
you.
discuss and bring it back to the council. Mr. Gorowski?
One of the important things, following up to you, Chairman Triano, Councilmember Triano, and also Councilmember Lombardi, we have a plan in place to maintain this land. One of the reasons that separates us from open space, it actually makes us partners with open space. Because if you looked at the layout of all the town land that our towns acquired over the years, have been gifted over the years, we are a small portion. 8.1% of all open space is under the Farm Heritage Committee's purview. One of our responsibilities is the maintaining of that land as farmland. Other discussions before this board, you heard how meadows turn into forests and forest turns into woodlands. One of our responsibilities is to maintain this as farmland. This master plan is simply a development beyond the simple work that we're currently doing now, which are contracts in place with local community contractors, Carabins being one of them, who hay our land. Because if you don't hay land properly, it turns into those other things I talked of. So we are maintaining the land, as you heard during Tom's presentation. On Pleasant Street, we have Leaf right there now with Mr. Ramsey. He's farming it, and we're in cooperation with the town departments, we're going to be adding some nutrients to that land to make it more quality farmland under his guidance and leadership. This master plan takes it beyond that preliminary step. Groski Farm is currently being hayed by Carabin.
Yes.
So Carabin might be a natural partner to come before the Farm Heritage Committee and say, we'd like to do a little more than hay. We'd like perhaps plant some vegetation, perhaps do some work with the maple trees, as Tom also talked to. As local farmers come forward, the Farm Heritage Committee is working on regulations and policies now for the use of the farm stand that now exists and other uses of our land. One of our opportunities is to create revenue to potentially do some of these projects down the road, or create other opportunities such as we have with the farm stand, where Sullivan High School students, local contractors did the foundation, and Mr. Pocock's foundation funded the things that we couldn't do with labor. So we're constantly at the Farm Heritage Committee looking at those opportunities to do this plan without taxpayer dollars. The fact that we've linked in ag science on Pleasant Street gives the opportunity for grants. As you know, the most successful grants that we achieve here in the state of Connecticut are ones that are connected to education. So now we can find a way to do land preservation, education in one. We're optimistic that we'll be able to find some grant opportunities when it comes time for the barn. And if a local business perhaps wants to help with Mr. Palmieri and their school, we might find some sheds with maybe a local business's name on it. And then little by little, our students with them could build some of those stone walls to bring our heritage back to these open space parcels.
Follow-up to this,
Okay.
for the chairman in your professional day job and for the chairman of the Board of Ed, I think it would be good to explain the details on how you're integrating that into the school system. What kind of classes are the kids going to? Or is that kind of a premature
It's a
question?
little premature, but as Tom mentioned, we actually sat down with Marion Standard, who runs the vocational agricultural program at Southington High School, and some of this is directly from them. We had a vision for one thing, for example, and they said, no, we don't want animals housed there permanently. We just need we want open land. We want a land lab. So hence, what you see, a lot of this is open space. So we're trying to maintain that farm heritage there, but yet come up with a plan. So to Mr. Gorowski's point, another good example, we talked about learning trellises. So maybe we can have Southington High School students actually help us build that, as it's a lesson for them in how to build something, and then, of course, the land benefits from it as well. So once we approve the concept, then we can start going out and maybe applying for grants and trying to find ways to find revenue sources for it.
Thank you.
Vice Chair Maselli.
Yeah, I just want to, Mr. Gorowski mentioned grants, you just mentioned grants. As someone who's a grant writer, there's so much money out there right now for this sort of healthful living and whatnot, and farming, and our bank population, they love to fund these kinds of things. So I know you have the expertise of Dave Donnelly if you need it, but you can also let me know if you want, because I'm telling you, there's money out there. I come across it all the time for
Excellent.
these specific types of projects.
And that's why I think it's important that we have a master plan, because without the master plan, we're throwing a dart in the air and there's no target. So we're trying to be finite with what our end result is, and I think this does that. Any?
One more thing.
Sure.
I can't let it go because I'm very sensitive to Mr. Lombardi's question about the maintenance and, and keeping it up. It is a big deal. Put a building up and we all look at it and go, what do you do? The barn design on Pleasant was chosen to be the type of roof that it is because you don't have to do much. You don't have to remove snow from the roof. My grandfather built a barn that's still up over on East Street, and they've put absolutely nothing into it. I think they put a coat of paint on it in the last 50 years. The good thing about this is the barns don't scare me. Trellises don't bother me. Farm stands don't bother me. They're relatively quick. The one concern we had as a committee was if you do put up a training center, that's way down the road, though, folks. I mean, we'd have to build a barn first. And if that was to go up, then you'd be talking about rentals, and you'd have to treat that kind of, but there has been a lot of discussion that's gone into that, because if it can't be cost neutral, I know it's not going to get by this body. So it's just the way it is. So we've been looking at that, just so you know.
Any other questions? All right, so again, this will be on for action at our next meeting. Thank you all for the presentation this evening. We appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to close out.
Okay, so I'd like to ask Mr. Harrison back up for the report from the Southington Housing Authority Director. And Mr. Riccio, this is the perfect moment, as you were alluding to earlier.
Okay.
We tried to give you a 2-for-1 tonight. Both presentations in the same meeting rather than
I
have you come
figured
up two
after the
nights.
first one, you wouldn't call me back.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to start off by just kind of giving you some information about the Housing Authority. Basically, the primary mission of the Housing Authority is to create and preserve affordable housing for low-income elderly individuals 62 years or older. Federal law also requires us to provide housing to anyone who is disabled regardless of age. This means anyone over the age of 17 who receives SSD is eligible to reside on our properties. The Housing Authority operates under the general statutes of the state of Connecticut and is in compliance with the regulations of the State Department of Economic Development. The operation of the Southern Housing Authority is overseen by CHFA. We currently manage 4 locations, 4 properties totaling 180 units, as I discussed before, with Academy Street, 43 Academy Street, our high-rise building, being our most recent building that was built, and that was in 1984. Our current wait list is 37% elderly Southington residents, and close to 42% out-of-town and young disabled residents. The number of lower-income elderly Southington residents on the list is very low. I have spoken with Town Manager Mark Shota about the possibility of the town giving land to the authority for us to build a future property on. Our long-term plan is to increase our inventory of housing. However, at this time, the state has given us a mandate to upgrade all existing infrastructure prior to new buildings due to the age of our properties. Once our properties are up to standards, we would look at options to increase our portfolio at that time. And open for questions.
Can I just ask, how does this compare to our neighboring communities as far as the percentages that you mentioned for people in need of housing?
Bear with me, I have that information.
And while you're looking, I'm also curious about the partnership you have with Janet Mellon and Bob Verderam,
Okay.
with related to those in need and our senior population.
Currently, I did check with some surrounding towns with some of their wait lists and if they were open or closed. Meriden right now, their waiting list is closed. They have roughly 1,200 on their wait list. Naugatuck is closed with about 53. Bristol Housing has roughly 500 on their wait list, and that is closed at this time. Wallingford has 145 on their wait list, which is closed at this time. And I think I told you Waterbury's 318.
So it's not unique to Southington.
It's not unique to Southington. I mean, I worked, before I came to Southington in 2017, I worked in East Hartford Housing Authority, and I know our wait list was very large. Probably the list wouldn't open for like every 2 years. It was normally 2 year to 2.5 year wait for most people on the wait list.
Okay. And can you just touch on
Janet Mellon?
Yes, Janet Mellon and Bob Verderam, just because they're covering the two populations that you mentioned.
Yeah, I've had contact with Janet. I've met with her. She had actually invited me to a couple meetings. One was about with CHFA and DOH in regards to the homelessness program that they're looking to start up in the state. So we talked about that. We deal a lot with the Calendar House also. We currently are having meals done once a month at our community rooms for our residents, and things like that. The other gentleman, what was the name on the other?
Bob Verderam? For the Calendar House?
I have not spent any time with Bob.
Okay.
He's the director of the Calendar House. You probably met him.
I've probably met him. I've been there. It's a beautiful, beautiful place.
Okay, Vice Chair Maselli?
Yeah, I'm just curious, you mentioned your long-term plan, but that first, you're looking to upgrade what you currently have in your units. What's that time frame? What do you predict in terms of how long it's going to take you to?
Well, I'm very hopeful that if we're able to continue getting the grants, after a Phase 3 grant, Pleasant Street should be complete, and then I would move on to probably 408 Main Street, then to 6 Carter Lane. I think within 5 years, if the grants continue to fall the way we hope they do, and that'll give us time again to get our base, get our rent increased. Basically we just got to generate more monthly income because, probably since the 80s, CHFA no longer gives any monies out. So it's basically we're all rent revenue driven to pay our bills, and I just want to make sure we want to make sure as housing authority that we're taking care of our current residents, and giving them a good, safe place to live and reside in. Thank you.
Councilman Barry?
Thank you, Alan, very much for coming.
Thanks, John.
I appreciate the conversation the other day, too.
Thank you.
And I know you have your hands full there because you came into a situation where a lot of our units do need a lot of upgrades, and I appreciate all the work you're doing on that end. In terms of the last time we had any additional housing under the Southington Housing Authority, can you tell me what year that was? Do you have
Yeah, that
number?
was the
Yep.
Academy Street property, 1984.
Okay, so
when
since
that high-rise was
Sure.
built.
So since 1984, we have had no additions to housing for subsidized, for housing authority based on low income in the town of Southington, correct?
Correct. That would have been the last time.
The other thing is on your handout, there's 174 units. Doesn't seem like a lot of units to me for a town our size. Is there something that maybe you could work with your board and also with the council to maybe look at where we could maybe look to expand and have new housing? That might be a priority that I think I'd be happy to work with you to see if there's something out there that we could maybe increase housing. The other issue is in terms of having a priority for Southington residents. Is that how it works in terms of openings, or how do you have to take anyone?
That would be considered preferences, which we have discussed preferences. I've discussed with the board about preferences, so that's probably something not too far in the future.
And the other issue is you did not open the waiting list last year.
January, correct.
So there was no one able to get on the list. So we don't really know for sure how long the waiting list is because you stopped taking applications. Is that correct?
No, the 174, that is the current wait list. Before January, we sent out what we purge the list. Once a year, you really should purge your list. What that is you send out the notices to everybody that's on the wait list just to get updated information on them. First of all, are you still looking for housing in Southington? If so, respond. If there's new address, phone number, email address. The hard part a lot of times is, again, when they've been on the list for a year and a half, phone numbers change, addresses change. So that's kind of how we're able to help give us a real good number, because I don't want to open up a list or not open up a list until I can kind of get as much facts as I can.
Yeah.
So July, most likely, the list would probably be opening up this July.
Well, thank you, Alan, for everything you're doing there. And
Thank you, too, for
just-
reaching out.
Yeah, the concern I have is people are confused what your organization does. The Southington Housing Authority allows people with low income to be able to have housing at a cost that they can afford. And that's very different than other senior housing that they talk about in the town of Southington. So let's say they say 55 and up, that's not really addressing the low-income resident that needs a place to live because they can't even afford a house or a condo. So this is rent that is based on income, and it's affordable. So I hope going forward we can look at expanding the amount of units we have. I think there is a big need, and I know there's a lot of federal and state programs out there that I think will be happy to help Southington look to expand the amount of units we have. So whatever we can do on that part, I think would be very beneficial to the people of Southington.
Okay.
So thank you, Alan.
Thanks, John.
Yep.
Mr. Ricchio, and then Mrs. Morrissey.
My question, and I should have asked this before, the units that we're currently renovating and that we do plan to renovate, do we have to displace the people living there? And if so, where are they going?
The first two handicap units that we're going to be doing this summer for the 2018 grant, basically at this point I have it set up to where I'm not going to have to put anybody up or anything. I have it worked out where somebody's going to be able to stay at someone's apartment. We're looking at roughly 3 weeks to do one of the handicap units, and then we're going to be transferring the other person in the handicap unit into the one that's going to be completed, and then we're going to do their unit. The only thing not determined yet, I met with his mother today, is either we're going to move him back to his current unit or keep him to the new unit that we transfer him to. So that's the only thing I'm working out right now. But yes, to answer your question, if I have an empty apartment at another property or at Pleasant Street, I would try to move him into that apartment, or I would have to put him up. It is our responsibility to house them. I can't just say you got to move for 3 weeks or a month.
And what about all the other units that aren't being fully renovated, the ones that are just getting like a kitchen upgrade or countertops?
Yeah, those we can do
Well,
without
the
having
residents
people to move out. That's one of the reasons why kind of stayed away from asking Mark to go for the 1.5 million on this 2019 grant, because that would have encompassed doing kitchens, bathrooms. Now, you have to displace people. And again, when you displace people and put them up in hotels, that doesn't come out of the grant money. That would come out of the Housing Authority money, which obviously,
Don't have, got it.
we're tight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Ricchio?
Thank you. I just want to say publicly, thank you
Hi,
for
Vicky.
your help in a situation that someone came to me and needed help, and you were very responsive. You called her back and talked with her, and I really appreciate that. Al, you gave statistics. You said about 31% are Southington residents, is that correct? And the rest of the folks, it might have been 31 or 32.
About 38, almost
Oh,
38%.
excuse me, I'm sorry,
Yeah.
38%.
Yeah.
So the rest of the folks are either out of towners or young people with special needs. Is that
Correct. Correct.
Did you break that down at all? I don't know if you have.
I-
that or not.
Only thing I did get, I think I provided in your packets. Did you get?
Oh, I didn't. I
think
didn't see
this-
that.
I did.
I
I kind of broke down the wait list, kind of like by town.
Yeah, I wanted to break it down.
Yeah.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
I did see that. I did see that. That's not exactly. I was just wondering, the folks that are out of town and the disabled young folks from Southington, or as opposed to those that are coming in from out of town. That's really what I was kind of looking.
Correct. I do have a breakdown, give you a rough idea. Bristol, we have 23 people on the wait list that are currently living in Bristol. 3 from Cheshire, 3 from Farmington, 3 from Hartford. Manchester has 3. New Britain, Plainville has 15. West Hartford, Waterbury. So it's pretty spread out.
Thank you so much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
You're welcome. Mr. Ricchio?
Yes, thanks for giving those numbers. We could build 10,000 units and we'll have a waiting list. So I think what we need to look at here is, what's reasonable. Just because we haven't built units since 1984 doesn't mean anything to me. Are we providing housing for our senior citizens? I know the special needs is another issue, but we can't provide housing for everybody. So are we meeting the current needs of our senior population? That's the most important. That's what we've always done. I understand the federal rules that are in place, but we've always looked to provide housing for our senior citizens who could not afford it. You just told us that the current rents don't even support the housing that we already have. So to go and add more is, to me, nonsensical. What I would suggest, because there is a fallacy in this community that there is not affordable housing around. That's absolutely false. So, perhaps have a liaison in your office. I don't even know if you have the ability to do that works with the private sector, that allows the private sector to get on your list and offer affordable housing to people that are on your list, as opposed to going and building hundreds of millions of dollars of new facilities that won't even pay for themselves. So, for the general public who hears that, oh my God, Southington, my kids can't live here, that is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard. That's not true. There are vacant apartments that are very affordable all over this community. And I would suggest working with the private sector before we look at anything after you've rehabbed these properties.
Thanks, Mike. I did look at a couple other properties around here, like Flanders West. They have 144 units total, and they do have subsidized units where they take 30% of their gross adjusted income.
There's subsidized units everywhere.
Same thing, yeah. So
And there's landlords that
there are out there.
may
Their
not-
wait list is currently 9 months to a
Okay.
year.
There's landlords out there too that may not currently have subsidized units, but if you had the ability to set up a list and those landlords were willing to take in someone that's 65 or 62, whatever the age is, and over, and get the subsidy from the state, I'd almost guarantee you'd have a zero waiting list.
Yeah, you have Section 8 vouchers.
Yeah.
You have the RAP
I mean, it's
certificates.
crazy.
There's definitely programs out there for people to
Thank you.
get affordable.
Yes, Mr. Dietzick.
You said something. I just want to get clarification on this, make sure I didn't mishear you. So, CHAFA allows you to give preferential treatment to an in-state or in-town resident?
You're allowed to have preferences. You're allowed to do veteran preference, and you could do a town resident preference. You have to first do a public comment period, and you know, the board
what-
would have to vote on it.
So under what circumstance would you not fill someone from the Sullyton waiting list in favor of someone in the out-of-town waiting list? Or are you saying that's how it works?
The preference?
Right.
Yeah, it would move them to the top.
So every single person on the Sullyton list would get filled with housing before an out-of-towner?
Potentially, if they would want to take, I mean, again, a lot of times when you call people, they're not ready to move, I still have to sell my house, or I'm not ready to move yet, I'm living with my, you know what I mean?
But
There's
that's your
different
office's,
circumstances.
that's your office's policy to give a preference to a Sullyton
We
resident.
don't have that right now.
But you can.
You can.
Okay.
There's a lot of housing authorities that have
And
preferences.
that's Chaffa that allows you to do that?
Yeah. HUD does also. HUD does that also. They have veterans. There's a multiple ones that you could do. But again, that's to the discretion of the board. The board would decide that, not me.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
Mr. Lombardi?
I guess it's a question for the council and for Al or possibly the town attorney, town manager. Al, who's your boss? Do you report to the council?
No, I report to the board.
And
The board chairperson, which would be
and
Sharon.
we appoint the
There-
board?
if I may.
So I understand like what we did in the public hearing, we authorized the town manager to sign.
Right,
So-
there's two different things. If you're asking who he reports to, the state statute specifically sets forth there's a housing authority appointed by this particular board.
Yep.
He answers to them. He's not allowed, well, their particular group is not allowed to apply for the grants that he's talking about. It's got to come through the town of Southington. That's why it comes through my office. Just like, for instance, sometimes the water department does its bonding, it has to come through the town of Southington. So in certain cases, in this particular one, this grant requires the town of Southington to be the grantee, and that's why it comes through me.
So, okay, so Councilman Barry made his point clear that he wants to increase the public housing number in town. We don't even have that authority.
It was a suggestion to work with the Housing Authority. We appoint the directors on the board.
Right.
Certainly, we don't have the power to, but I think if we work together for that goal, that's something that I would like to be part of. Certainly, maybe the will of the council is not to increase the amount of units in this under the control of the Southington Housing Authority. Certainly, it would be the will of the council if we wanted to engage in a partnership with them.
Okay, sorry to keep asking these
Yep.
questions, but, so how is the housing authority funded? Is that,
The only, they're funded
We're-
through
we're-
their.
we're separate
it's not,
entity.
it's not through our budget?
Now, the only thing that's in your budget that I'm responsible for is the sewer charges. Our budget pays for the sewer charges, that's all we do.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, next discussion point is regarding the tolls resolution. So first, I'd just like to take a moment and acknowledge we have some of our state representatives here with us. Currently, our state representative, Gail Mastro-Francesco, is here, thank you. And we have our state senator, Rob Sampson, is here as well. And Speaker of the House, Jill Simowitz, is here as well. So thank the three of you for being here with us this evening. So with that, I will turn it over to Councilman Lombardi. I know you had asked to have this on the agenda, so I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. I wanted to introduce this resolution, and I will say that this is probably the biggest state issue since 1991. I understand that it is a state issue, but it's also the biggest capital expenditure that the state has ever undergone, and I'm hoping that the town council will just stand with the residents and make a statement that we are against tolls. And I think if we send a message to our legislators that's a firm message. I know we've done resolutions before, so I'm hoping that we can all agree to stand behind our residents, that when we look a resident in the eye, we stood with them. We did as much as we possibly could to fight tolls, which is going to hurt our economy, which is going to cause prices to go up, and everything else. We pay the second highest tax in the country in this state, and Southington residents need to know that their town council stands with them on this issue. So that's why I introduced it. Other towns have done it. So I think that we should be a leader around the state and send a strong message to Hartford.
Okay. Any other discussion?
I have a lot
Mr.
of
Ricchio.
questions, and so, I mean, I can ask him, I'd like to ask him to Representative Aaron Simowitz. I've read him in the paper on his Facebook page as promoting the toll, so if you don't mind, I'd like to ask him some questions. He's here tonight.
Is that okay with you? Okay.
Can you please come to the podium? We've gotten a lot of concerns from our residents here in Southington. I'm not speaking for other towns, but I'd like to be able to tell our residents a lot of things that I don't have answers to. If we put tolls on the roads, what will the cost be? Our residents, a lot of our residents, I don't have exact figures, but a lot of our residents commute to Hartford or New Haven because of where we're located. What will the cost be to the average family that lives in Southington on an annual basis to pay tolls to travel on the highways?
Councilor Ricchio, I appreciate you asking the question. And if I'm vague at all, I will circle back. But the problem is you have 3 different toll bills that have made their way out of the Transportation Committee, all of which require a process that could take up to 2 to 3 years, which includes they have to vet it all with the federal government, whether it's discounts, whether it's tolling placements, the price of it. So those questions at this time just simply can't be answered. There's been preliminary ideas put out by the Department of Transportation. Some said 82 tolls, others had 52 tolls. Governor Lamont has put out a tolling plan that includes just bridges only. So that specific question, I would love to be able to answer and provide you that information. I appreciate you asking. It's just not possible to answer at this time. We're not even sure what the tolling bill that'll make its way through the General Assembly will look like. It's all just proposals at this particular moment.
So Governor Malloy, former Governor Malloy, put forth the tolling idea and or the legislature to cover the fairly ambitious $100 billion improvement plan that's supposed to take place over the next 30 years. Can you provide us with the details of that?
So governor's plan was put out in public, but it never passed through the legislative process. So like anything else, whether it's a presidential, whether it's a gubernatorial, it's just a proposal. They could be rather vague in nature. They can lay out one that some of you might be familiar with. It was Michelle Obama's initiative about making sure kids eat healthy food. It's a proposal. It's ambitious, but the details are lacking. I will tell you, Governor Malloy's plan was never acted upon by the legislature, so it never got the vetting from either the Legislative Commissioner's Office, the Office of Fiscal Analysis, or any department at the Capitol.
So the legislature took an initiative, let's call it that, within the last couple of weeks to move tolls to the next level?
Yeah, so that's a great question also. So by moving through the committee process, we all saw the great little cartoon, you know, it's a bill on Capitol Hill. It's very similar. Any legislator in the opening session, long session, which is this year, can raise any proposal. This particular instance, I believe the Senate raised the tolling bill, the House raised the tolling bill, and the governor raised the tolling bill. The committee raised those bills. They put some draft language into it, and they held a public hearing. And then they voted out all 3 of those bills. So all 3 of the bills will now make their way to the calendars of the respective chambers. But in the meantime, a 14-day process will be taken by the nonpartisan staff. They'll come up with the fiscal note, and they'll give you the reference and how it pertains to other laws. Some of them laid out specific process. Other ones were vague in the process and just talked about what they want to do. So the Senate bill was on the Senate calendar, or will be in the next few days, and the House bill will also be on the House calendar. And they'll just await action. Typically what I would imagine is going to happen is there'll be discussions amongst the Senate, the governor, and the House as to what the bill criteria moving forward. One of the bills had a 15-day, if not acted upon, would be deemed approved. I will tell you the votes aren't there for that in the House. So that's probably one of the things that'll fall off. But I can't say that for sure because it's really a tri-party negotiations, including the Republican side of the aisle in both chambers.
So I have several more questions. I'm happy to alternate.
Can I ask one?
Absolutely, yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for coming. And I know this is a difficult topic for all of us.
It's pretty easy for me.
What concerns me the most is that this fabricated crisis is all predicated on a $100 billion plan that hasn't even been vetted. Okay, so that's number one. Like, who's looked at this? Who's reviewed it? Obviously, we can create a crisis over anything if we make the price tag high enough. That's number one. Number two is, do you support the Transportation Finance Panel's report to Governor Malloy from 3 years ago in January 2016, when just the tolls was the tip of the iceberg? Tolls didn't even generate, not even nearly close to enough revenue to address this crisis.
Yeah.
The fabrication of crisis is what I'll call it.
I strongly disagree with your categorization of a fabrication of crisis. If we do nothing, 2024, the Special Transportation Fund will be broke. You can take all the bonding in the world up against our bonding cap, and let's be clear what that bonding will get rid of. It will get rid of many of the things you talked about here tonight. It will get rid of LoSiP. It'll get rid of Town Aid Road. It will get rid of STEEP. It will get rid of all that to go to transportation. If we do that, we still, in 2024, will not have the money in the Special Transportation Fund. I don't want to address Governor Malloy's ambitious plan. He's no longer the governor. I believe he's up in Massachusetts somewhere. So we'll leave that to the side.
So there'll be a
But
new plan?
Yes. So my goal is, and again, it's not absolutely captured. I think Senator Logan and I had a great back and forth in one of the hearings, that we actually have to have a Transportation Oversight Board. One of the bills calls for it to assume debt. I don't think it should assume debt. I think the action still needs to come back to the legislature, but the Transportation Oversight Board, what it should be, is made up of the COGS, business leaders, legislative and executive branch, to hold DOT's feet to the fire, to where whatever plan we do come up with, if it's 100 million, if it's 50 million, I can tell you we have immediate problems, but to ensure that we're prioritizing them in a way that encourages economic development, that it holds to a deadline. We explore the public-private partnerships, and they come in at or below budget. And if not, they need to come back to the legislature and tell us why. I think, quite honestly, for too long, DOT has been able to operate just in their area with little or no oversight. So I think the Transportation Oversight Board that used to exist needs to re-exert itself and ensure that we're getting the best bang for our buck and ensuring the money's being spent in the right way for the projects that are needed for, most importantly, economic development.
Another question I have is, I've seen a lot of comments, I can't attribute them to you directly, but I've seen a lot of comments in the newspaper that there are trucks that pass through the state of Connecticut that need to pay their fair, they pass our borders, need to pay their fair share of our road use. Are we not already, don't those truckers already pay a mileage fee to the state of Connecticut in the tune of about 40 million?
It's a little bit less, but you're absolutely right, they do. The problem really comes into effect, and other states have studied it, that the trucks themselves do 20 to 35% of the damage on the roads. And considering that we have that gas tax, we have the gross receipt tax, that's all going into the Special Transportation Fund, what they pay, and they do pay, you're absolutely right, really is a percentage-wise and pales in comparison to what the rest of us pay, really for the other damage that's done to the roads, but the trucks do a great amount of damage.
Doesn't it make sense, though, that if you support tolls, it's a tax, that when they deliver our food, our petroleum, our goods to Home Depot, our clothes, that they're not going to just sit and eat that. It's going to come through in higher costs to the residents in the form of tax. It's a tax that the truckers aren't going to pay it.
Yeah, so I understand your point, and I think it's just we're parsing words. You and I call it a user fee. You're going to come in and use our highways, you should pay something. Currently, I don't think they pay enough, and I think that's originally what Governor Lamont was trying to get at when he said the truck things. I will tell you, you travel to every other state, including Rhode Island, Massachusetts, New York, New Jersey, Maryland, keep going. The truckers pay there. They're currently not paying here, but if they're traveling through those other states, because we don't have great ports, so they're either coming.
I think if the people that know me here know me pretty well, yeah. I don't go by he's doing it, we should do it.
No, I get you.
If I operated my business like that,
I think
I'd be out of business.
I think you're already paying for tolls, is my point, sir. That if they're paying them in other states, if you're the final end consumer, which is your argument, which I get, you're already paying for them.
When we got rid of tolls, is it true that the federal government gave us a $250 million annual subsidy to replace that?
So
Okay.
we actually get 750 million.
Excuse me one second, just for a point of order. So I appreciate you answering the questions, but really this is intended to be a town council discussion. So if
You
there
can't
are
have a
fu-
discussion if you don't have answers.
Mr. Ricchio, if there are future questions, I'm sure we can maybe submit them to the speaker and he can get them answers to us, but this was asked to be put on the agenda as a discussion amongst the council members, which is why it's on the agenda this evening. Not intended to be a question and answer.
And I thank you, Mr. Chairman, for putting it on, and I stand by, that we should stand against tolls. It's been made even more clear this evening that the Capitol, there's a lot of unanswered questions, but tolls are being pushed through, and we need to stand up now, more than ever, against this tolls.
And in all fairness to everybody up here, I know what you do, and I appreciate it greatly. I served on a local town council for 3 terms. It's not easy. It's a balance. And your questions, all of your questions, are fair questions. This is the word of caution that I will give you. I don't even know what the answers of what the final product with tolls will look like. You don't know, and you can't say substantively how it's going to affect the town of Southington. So to take an action just saying no tolls without actually having the details of what it looks like, what's the benefits, how the fundings are going to go, to me would be really putting the cart before the horse. It's like me as a resident voting no against the budget before you present it. Just because I don't want any increase. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's going to kids and seniors, but I'm telling you I'm a no. I think you would, rightfully so, chastise me and say, wait a minute, Mr. Arsenowitz, can you just pause and find out what we're doing with it? At least evaluate our priorities based upon the facts before you make a decision. That's what I would ask of you. Look, you guys have tough jobs, and I do appreciate it. But let's make sure that we have the information in front of us.
Mr. Speaker,
Mr.
may
Chairman.
may
I
ask-
appreciate it, but again, I'd like to open the conversation up amongst the council members
Oh, then,
at this time.
Mr. Chairman, then I would address this to my colleagues. First of all, thank you.
Thank you,
Speaker
thank you.
Arsenowitz.
Yes, thank you.
Thank
Just
you.
one more question, and I'll put my Sullyton,
One more.
Sullyton Town Council hat on. So,
Go ahead, Mr. Dietzick, and then
Final
again,
question.
the council can open the discussion. Go ahead.
Mr. Speaker, thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
So here's my question, and I'm going to narrow it as close as I can to Sullyton. So we previously had a presentation from CROG about putting a bus route in Sullyton. Now, is there any information regarding, and I know you said but there has to be a traffic study out there about what tolls will do to arterial roads in a town. Is that correct?
Yeah, so DOT, as part of the initial idea, they did allocate some resources to it and came up with the idea. That's why the gantries, everybody talks about the gantries, and you see them in Massachusetts and other places. I think by the time we do it, it'll look drastically different, but let's go with that so we can all visualize the gantries. The dollar amount charged under their idea would be very low, but it would be very often. So that way, you wouldn't necessarily just be able to jump off on West Street, come down to Queen Street, and avoid the toll. Or even if you want to go a step further, jump off on West Street, follow it all the way down, catch 72, and come in the other way. So the amount of gantries were based upon the need to alleviate that. But the answer is, we don't know, right? I will tell you, and this is just me speaking, I've gone through Virginia and Maryland, and they have the HOV lane that they converted over to the, I pay the little extra money, not get caught in traffic. I don't know how that would impact the study. You have others that are just, and some in this room, just opposed to tolls no matter what, and they'll go every side road to avoid them. So it's hard to come up with the math.
And that is my biggest fear,
Yeah.
is now you have arterial roads, with extra traffic, with a bus. And from my point of view, it just makes it a much more difficult vote.
Yeah, and look, that's an absolutely fair point, and that's why when the language was contained in the bill of the 15-day deem approve, look, I don't think that's appropriate. We need to be held responsible for that. If we're going to move forward with it, when the plan comes back, we need to come to the town council and say, hey, town council, here's your tolling plan. This is where all the things are, your issues of the congestion on the side roads, economic development. We can answer those. Just right now, it's just incredibly premature, but all your questions are dead on accurate.
Thank you. And again, if there's future questions for the speaker, I know you'll be happy to answer any questions that the council members have.
Any point in time, and to go a step further, if you want to email me any of your questions, I'll send it to DOT, governor's office, whatever you absolutely need. I would like to be a form of information for you.
Thank you, we appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Councilman Poulos has been waiting patiently. Go ahead.
Have I, Mr. Poole?
Mr. Chairman, I just like to share some perspective. I'm not certain, but I think I might be the member on the dais most impacted by tolls. I could be wrong, but I say this because I commute 37 miles to and from Reading, Connecticut for work every day via Route 84. And I know that with tolls, I'd certainly take on a financial burden for my commuting expenses. Probably somewhere, again, we don't have clear information, but reading as many news sources as possible, looks somewhere between $100 and $200 a month. And, you know, at the same time, and so I understand that, at the same time, when I drive down Route 84 west every morning, I cross over the McMaster in Waterbury, and every day. And I go on the lower level of that bridge, and I look up, and the thing is in disrepair. It is rusted out underneath. When it's raining, water is coming down through the top level on my car. They've widened 84, beautiful job on our side of 84 going into Waterbury and on the other side, but unfortunately that creates a bottleneck on that bridge, and it's just in dire need of maintenance, okay? And I share this because I don't want people to think that I haven't thought about the issue and how it's gonna affect them. Like, the truth is, I've thought about it a lot. And when I look at the resolution, and I think of these two anecdotes, like my financial burden and the state of infrastructure in our state, I have a few thoughts and questions that cross my mind that I'd like to share. First and foremost, regardless of what we think as a council, regardless of what any governing body thinks that's going to make a decision about this, we have to maintain our infrastructure. And you know, my grandparents' generation, like, voted and paid to create the interstate system in our state and country, and it's our generation's responsibility to maintain it. Simple fact, okay? We can't let it go into disrepair. We can't neglect. We don't want another Mianus River Bridge incident happening in Hartford or in Bridgeport or in Waterbury. We got to maintain the roads. And so I read the resolution, and I find myself wondering, okay, so we say no to tolls. What's the alternate plan for funding this maintenance? Are we going to raise taxes somewhere else? Are we going to rob Peter to pay Paul, take it, not fund something and pay that? If it's funded by other taxes or by taking away from something else, is this council going to be presented with more resolutions about, you know, not supporting or supporting other issues? Are we going to continually be asked to stand for or against issues that the state legislature is designed to handle? I don't even know if that's our role. I don't even know if that's an effective use of our time. Clearly there's a lot of unanswered questions. There's strong opinions. Like, I recognize there's strong opinions. There's a lot of emotions on the table, you know, and I think perhaps when that's the case, when we don't have a lot of, the speaker just said, I don't even know. We don't know. I started ticking off how many times I heard that phrase. When we have comments like that, we need to take a pause. Okay, we need to step back, and we have to consider that this issue might be more complicated than a simple yes or no to a resolution. I've spent the past few weeks talking to people, trying to get information. I talk to residents, young people like myself that have young families that commute, travel distances. I've talked to seniors, people that are retired. And what I've found is that with our residents, people are falling on both sides of this issue. Okay, I'm having trouble finding like a consensus. Okay, I've tried to gather facts from objective sources. I've like gone through newspaper articles. I see 3 different proposals, 2 to 3 years before we're going to know anything. You know, bridges only, borders. I consulted the town attorney this week because I said, what is legal? Like, I need, you know, what is legal on this? Are we going to lose federal funding for roads? There's a lot of unanswered questions. Despite all of these efforts, I'm having trouble getting a clear information on this. And instead of the consensus from residents on the issue, all I'm hearing is conflicting opinions, varying impacts, a number of scenarios that may or may not come to light. And quite frankly, on one hand, I hesitate to consider Mr. Lombardi's resolution because it's fueled by emotions and it tries to simplify a very complicated issue. A very complicated issue that needs time.
Councilman Poulos, the
One
governor
moment, I'm
lied
not
to us.
finished.
Mr.
Please,
Lombardi,
Governor lied to us.
Mr.
I'm
Lombardi,
asking for the rest
Mr.
of the-
Lombardi, let him finish, and then you can have an opportunity.
On the other hand, I keep coming back to the fact that this is a state issue. Okay, we've elected state legislators. I'm thankful that some of them are here tonight to represent our town in Hartford. And it would be great, like, isn't it their role to sit down, determine what's best for the town of Southington? No. Okay, hold on a second, and then go represent us at the LOB? No. That's the civics lessons I got. But in my view, I think that this council, right now, okay, as we develop and form our opinions, and again, we're impacted in many ways by this. I think it's our job right now to think about our local issues. We have a big town budget we have to consider in a month and a half. We need to work to create a fiscally sound town budget. That's our number one priority. That's what we're voted for to do, to govern our town and to pass our budget. And that's the type of issues that I think we need to focus on.
Okay, Councilwoman Triano has been waiting, and that.
He addressed me, so I have.
But Councilwoman Triano asked to speak next. She was waiting.
Yes,
Go ahead.
Councilwoman Triano, please. With all due respect, Mr. Poulos, when I hear you say it's not a town council issue, I want to tell you that the impact that these tolls will make on a town that has 5 exits on 84, the impact that this idea of tolls will make on people with fixed incomes, on single moms trying to get to a minimum wage job. We're not talking about you, Chris. We're not talking about me or probably anybody at this table. We're talking about those that cannot afford this. And the second thing, and I do appreciate the speaker being here. No, listen, guys, I want to just say this. I appreciate every one of you, but I want us to be respectful of each other, and I do appreciate the speaker being here. I appreciate Rob Sampson and Gail being here, and Joe Markley and Len Suzio. It's wonderful, but we have to get this point across, because you're right about one thing. It's an emotional issue, and we will not step back from the emotion because it tears at the heart of this community and the citizens that we have been elected to represent. Now, you can vote against the resolution, you can say no, but understand that your vote has a direct impact on the citizens. We're not talking about some place in Oz somewhere, we're talking about Southington and the direct impact that that is going to make on these citizens that stand before you right now and had to sit through a long meeting already. I feel strongly, and I'm not going to go on, but I feel strongly that that is a cop-out from I can't even believe that I heard some of that stuff.
Oh, my God, stop.
It's a cop-out because you have made it into a Republican or Democratic issue. This is an issue that affects those people sitting out there. This is an issue that affects every single person that is going to end up paying an incredible amount of money for tolls. And the last thing I want to say is, with respect to the speaker, he acknowledged that there are so many things that we don't know. Then why would Hartford vote on something that they don't even know the specifics, that they don't even know the impact,
Okay.
and that they wouldn't even know?
Can I just address that?
You get a paycheck.
Okay, Councilwoman Triano. Councilwoman
It's
Triano.
not appropriate.
Councilwoman
It's very
Triano.
appropriate.
You
That-
you go after
Thank-
people personally like you
Thank-
did with
thank
Mr.
you.
Poulos. Now you're going after me.
Okay,
It's not
please,
appropriate.
please, we need to be respectful to each other. Mr. Lombardi, you were
Yes,
waiting.
No, and I, Councilman Poulos made his points, I understand. But tonight was further evidence to me that there is no plan in Hartford, but yet the governor wasn't truthful with the residents about tolls, and we are being force-fed tolls. And we just learned tonight that there's no plan. So we need to stand, yes or no. Either we're against tolls or we're for tolls. There's nothing in between. And I Councilman Poulos, nobody disagrees that the infrastructure needs updating. Nobody has said that at the legislature. But the residents of Southington do not want tolls, and we should make a strong statement with our residents. And I don't know who you talk to, but I haven't heard one person who wants tolls.
Okay.
And that's it. And Mr. Chairman, I apologize for being rude or out of line earlier, and same to you, Councilman Poulos. But
Thank you.
it is an issue that I think we need to stand with. And to say that it's a state issue, yes, I agree. And 99% of the time, we should stay out of state issues. But when it's this large, this is going back to 1991 and income tax. We should tell the residents how we feel. I really believe that.
Councilwoman Morrissey, then Councilman Ricchio.
So I have to say, and we've said this many times here, we do not get paid. The state reps get paid to do a job. I should not do their job for them. As it's been said several times already today, we don't know what's happening at the Capitol. And you don't know what you don't know. If we don't give them a chance to put forth a idea, a proposition, just show us the statistics that you asked for, just show us the plan, how are we ever going to know if it works or not? We can't just say no because we don't have a clear answer.
If I could remind residents, please, there will be public communication. We'll allow you an opportunity to speak, but again, I just want to maintain a respectful conversation, please.
Mr. Ricchio, you said I don't do anything, and I'm just going to paraphrase here. I don't do anything just because someone told me to do it. At the same time, how can we just say no just because other people are saying no? We don't even have a presentation in front of us. And I think at our we voted a couple meetings ago for Tobacco 21. And I think Mr. Dietzig said it best, and again, I will paraphrase something to the effect of, I wish the state would do something. I wish this was a state level. This is at the state now. Let them present something to us. Let them give us an idea. Ms. Triano is talking about how it's affecting, the poor mothers or the people on low income or medium income. How do you know that tolls aren't going to generate more than what those people are going to pay in tax? The answer is you don't know yet. You're asking us to talk about something, to vote on something that there are no results for yet.
Yeah.
All set, Mrs. Morrissey?
For now.
Okay, Mr. Ricchio?
Yes. Thank you. To Mr. Poulos' point, before they institute tolls on the highway, I think they should look at the tax that's put on petroleum before it makes it to the pumps. The gas tax, the $250 million check that comes in from the federal government, the sales and use tax that keeps going up. It goes on and on and on. The issue I think that the residents are having is that in all the proposals that come out of Hartford, we hardly ever see any reduction. I didn't get to ask the question, is this going to be put out to the private sector, or are we going to create a whole new other state agency with all union employees? I mean, that's a question. And with all due respect to the Speaker of the House of Representatives, how long have you been up in Hartford? 14 years? Speaker, how many years? 2 years. You've been there for 14 years. And again, appreciate everything you've done for Southington, but you can't answer any questions. I find that preposterous.
Of course he can.
Mr. Ricchio, he did answer questions, so that's out of line.
Can I finish? Do I have the floor?
Excuse me.
No, excuse me. There's state representatives here that if I asked them to come up here, I bet they could answer almost all of my questions.
Mr. Ricchio, again, I'm asking for a respectful conversation, please.
This is a hot topic.
I understand, but I want respect, please. Go ahead.
I would almost guarantee, and I'm sure you're not going to allow it, that if we had the other state representatives or Mr. Suzio or Mr. Markley come up to this podium, they could answer a whole whirlwind of questions. I had to sit here, and I was the only person on this council that voted no against the vaping thing. I had to sit here for an issue that it's a state issue. It's not a local issue. I sat here, didn't say too much, gave my small opinion, and voted. I sat here while this council voted on a resolution about a private company, Bradley Memorial Hospital. So to say that this is not a local issue, or we can't debate issues that happen at the state of Connecticut, is crazy. You guys set the precedent on it, not me.
Vice Chair- Vice
I
Chair
have
Sempra.
questions here that could go on and on and on. And the Speaker of the House doesn't have answers, but he has opinions that I keep reading, in the newspaper. And Mr. Barry, Vicky brought it up already. You have a direct conflict of interest. You shouldn't even be sitting on the dais for this. You're employed
Oh, my God.
at their behest at the Legislative Office Building as an employee of the state legislature. You shouldn't even be sitting up here to have this discussion. This council passed the strictest ethics code in the state of Connecticut, and it would preclude you from having this conversation.
Well, I just.
Vice Chair Maselli.
With regard to the Hartford Healthcare resolution, I do think that there was a difference there. It's just my opinion. I think there was a difference there because that's a business within our community, and there was no higher board or commission or committee or leadership to take on that issue.
The hospitals are governed by the state of Connecticut.
Can I just
Mike,
speak?
please. Go ahead, Dawn.
All right. You know, I'm not going to go into all of my different things because they've already been said by many of you. But what I am going to say is, you're saying this is a hot topic issue. You know what? It is a hot topic issue. But I'm going to tell you, how are we going to pick and choose? This would be precedent setting in terms of what are we picking and choosing in terms of state issues? Because, to me, another huge hot button issue right now is the proposed legalization of marijuana, which I am staunchly opposed to. So if we're going to start picking and choosing what hot button state topics we're going to talk about, then I want to get into marijuana. Because I feel that that also has an economic impact, that has an impact on our police department, that has an impact on our Southington residents. So is this what we're going to do every council meeting now?
Yes.
We're going to talk. No, well then why didn't, well, hold on,
Why do we even
folks.
have a state
Then why
rep?
didn't we do that under your tenure? Why are we only doing it now? Why this year? We have had things impact us from the state level for years and years, for the entire decade I've been on this council. Why now? And you're going to say, hot button issue, and I say, darn it, so is marijuana. And I want to make sure that marijuana doesn't get
Me too.
legalized in this state.
Me too.
But I'm saying, but it's not under our purview.
And neither is smoking cigarettes or vaping.
Well,
But you see.
Well, we have steps
Okay.
in this community.
And Steps
we
doesn't want
support-
marijuana either.
Right, I agree.
So then bring it up. Let's talk about it.
Why didn't we? Okay.
Again, if we can please limit
Let's do it.
comments to one at a time, please. Councilwoman Triano, go ahead.
Thank you, Chris. For me, Dawn, I understand what you're saying, but for me, when it raises the concern of our constituents, when we have people calling every day, you're going to stand against this thing, right? You're going to stand against this thing. When I go to the Carousel for breakfast or to the Pepper Pot, and I can't have breakfast because I have 3 or 4 people stopping and asking me, some of you guys are down there all the time, you know who I'm talking to. I can't have breakfast because the people are the ones who bring it up, not us. So I think, I say go for this thing against marijuana. I'll stand right with you on it because it affects our children and our people. Is it a state issue? Yes, it is. But let me tell you, it comes right down to the seats in this auditorium.
Yeah.
Councilwoman Morrissey.
You are never going to please everyone. You can say that you talk to X number of people and they all say no to tolls, and I can talk to another handful of people that all say yes to tolls. You are never going to please anyone. And until we have actual results, actual data, an actual presentation of what this proposal will look like, how can you vote one way or another?
But Kelly, they're going to vote for a proposal that they don't even know the impact of.
okay,
They're
that's not
doing
true.
That is exactly what he's saying. They're waiting on. They're getting proposals together.
The reality is the bill is not formed yet. You could bring up Uncle Fester, and he's not going to be able to answer the questions. Joe Markley, Len Suzio, they can tell you what they think the bill was going to do, but with all due respect, nobody knows. The bill is not finalized. There's 3 different proposals. I can tell you where all the money went to the STF over the years, and it's gone there all but 1 year, so nobody's rated it. All I'm saying is it's just like you. You're all doing your budget. It'd be like me saying, Councilman, with all due respect, no matter what you put in the budget, it's a no. I'd like to think I'm a more educated voter, that I'm going to wait to see what the exact proposal is, evaluate the spending of the town council versus what the benefit will be. And that's all I'm saying. You could be against tolls in theory, but at least to let us formulate a bill, present it to the floor. I'll come back and go over the whole bill with you. But then still, there's a 3-year process to where it has to go through permitting.
The problem,
Then we'll
Mr.
come
Speaker,
back-
is, the problem
we'll
is
come back
that
and
you're
review it.
quoted in all the newspapers.
Mr.
You are
Ricchio.
quoted in all the newspapers.
Ricchio.
Excuse me.
Mr.
You're quoted
Ricchio,
in all
you're
the
out of
newspapers.
order. Mr. Ricchio.
I don't care. You are quoted in all the newspapers.
We're in a
favor
recess,
of
please.
tolls. Everywhere I read, on your own
Recess,
Facebook
please.
page, you're in favor, but you don't have any answers.
What
So you're
answers
just
do you
as
want?
guilty
Go ahead.
as we are.
Go ahead, let's ask.
Regular session, we're continuing our discussion. I'd just like to remind members of the council that people are out of order if they're not directing questions through the chair in an orderly and respectful manner. I'm not going to have disorder appear and disrespect. So we can have debate, we can have conversations, but it needs to be done respectfully. So the conversation is open back up again. Mr. Dietzick?
So, I think it's pretty clear that the issue is very, very emotional. I don't think the vote is very emotional. I supported the Bradley resolution because it's a resolution. The town attorney knows a resolution doesn't bind anyone. We don't have jurisdiction to make any decisions regarding tolls. But why I voted and why I voted for Tobacco 21 is because the impact on the town. So I think this vote is very simple. If you vote no for the resolution, then I think you believe that the town of Southington is in favor of tolls. If you vote yes, it's vice versa. I just see it as very, very black and white. It's not emotional. It's a resolution, and each councilperson has to leave it to their own druthers.
Mr.
So why
Chairman,
don't
I don't see it as black and white. It's an emotional issue, and we have a lack of information. So it's hard to vote on something when you're not properly informed about all the details of it. It's not a question of for or against tolls right now. It's a question of a blanket extreme no when we don't have all the information. That's where that's why I stand where I stand in terms of not ready to make a decision on this because there's incomplete information.
Go ahead, Mr. Lombardi, and then
Thank
Mrs. Morrissey.
Councilman Poulos, you would probably make a great legislator at the state with those comments because that's what we need at the Capitol. Somebody to take a step back and say, where's the plan? This $100 billion makes no sense. Let's start with a plan and then move forward. Hasn't happened. So with that, I would like to make a motion to add under old business item C, action on the tolls resolution.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Is there any other discussion? Is there any other discussion?
I just have one comment. So
I have something.
I would like to, Mr. Dietzick, respond to your, if you vote no to the resolution, you're saying yes to taxes, and that is incorrect, at least in my opinion, and everyone can go for yourself. I am not voting no to the resolution because I want the tolls, and I'm not voting the other way either. I literally do not have enough information to make this type of decision to say, oh, I'm totally opposed to tolls because there might be a positive impact that I am for, and I just don't know that yet. So it's not a yes or no for me. It's very gray.
But it's a resolution, and it opens up any person who votes for further fact-finding to change their opinion. It's exactly what it is in Bradley. I may change my vote, but I just don't understand, for purposes of a resolution, I think it's pretty clear. I think Southington does not want tolls. Maybe information will come up and change, and you're free to change your vote. It's a resolution. And that's why I think the vote is very, very clear. It's just a resolution.
Okay, any other
Yes,
comments?
I
Okay,
have-
Mr.
I-
Barry?
Yes, thank you all very much. First of all, I want to thank our delegation. I think Gail Master Francisco, who's a new legislator, her salary is about $28,000 a year, so good for you. People think you make $150,000, and obviously Senator Sampson, Speaker Simowitz make a little bit more with leadership titles, but legislators don't make a lot of money, and they do a lot of work up there, and it's really a full-time job, so I commend everyone that serves up in Hartford. Concerning this toll issue, so this past weekend I was talking to someone, they said, John, you know why the Republicans are bringing this up to the council? And I said, well, I kind of think I know. And they're like, well, I said, what do you think? And they said, well, they want to get you on the record to say you're for tolls so that they can run in November and say you are supportive of tolls. Well, let me just give everyone a reality check. I have no authority over tolls. My vote is meaningless on this board. It is a waste of our time, in my opinion, to talk about every major state issue that comes before the legislature. there are a lot of controversial issues. We could talk about, the opiate crisis. We can talk about abortion. We can talk about gay marriage. We can talk about so many issues that are really important to people in Southington. But we're not going to do that. Let's get a reality check. The council, Southington Town Council, is not going to sit here every 2 weeks and talk about the latest controversy at the Capitol. We'll never get anything done. So, and I understand what's happening here. I understand the new media, social media. Everyone's on social media, and I think it's probably very good. People can immediately get on Facebook and talk about stuff. And my colleagues have, like Councilwoman Triano. She posted the whole resolution on social media. It ended up on Southington Politics. I don't know if she put it there or if someone put it there, but it was on there. Councilman Lombardi, he was down on Queen Street, and I believe Ms. Triano was there too, protesting. And I think that's about democracy, and that's a great thing. Now, it's kind of ironic where they were protesting. The Tea Party has been protesting there for probably the last 18 years, and there's always signs that are anti-Malloy or anti-Lamont, just anti-Obama. So it is interesting of why we're having this discussion tonight on the council. I get it. Tolls are controversial. No one wants to pay more money in taxes. I sit here every year and do a budget. It's painstaking to when I have to even slightly increase the budget to have to impact someone's taxes. No one likes to raise taxes. Now, concerning this resolution, I don't know who the author of the resolution is. Mr. Lombardi brought it forward. I'm almost positive he didn't write the resolution because the resolution is very similar to other towns that have done similar resolutions. So there might be parts of it that were new, but the first whereas and the last whereas was the same as another town. So this is like maybe a coordinated effort statewide, which is fine. That's how democracy works. But let's be real. This is not just about Southington. This is a much bigger issue. In terms of the whole issue about tolls, I have so many questions. I don't know if it's fake news, if it's real news, maybe it's true, maybe it's false, I don't know. But let's talk about how, if we just keep it the way it is, the status quo, the way we fund everything today. That's through gas taxes. I guess there's other sales taxes that have been earmarked for transportation. But one of the plans out there, and I don't know if it's true, is said we're just going to keep it the way it is, and we're just going to bond, and we're going to keep within the existing bond level that was set. Okay, we know, based on studies, and Mr. Poulos brought up the Mixmaster in Waterbury, that project is estimated to be $7.2 billion, just one project in Waterbury, okay? The other issue is the I-84. Everyone knows the elevated highway, it's falling apart. There's some estimates that could be anywhere from $3 to $12 billion. All right, so we're talking just conservatively, we're talking maybe $18 billion for just two projects statewide. Now, if we just keep it the status quo and we keep within the bonding, the limit of bonding, what happens? Do other projects that were important to the people of Southington not get funded because we have a bond cap? I don't know what's true or what's not true. I don't know what's fake news and what's true. None of us do. So I guess the question is open space important to you? Is water and clean air initiatives, major sewer plant upgrades, upgrades to schools, can all that stuff be bonded too? And all the transportation requirements? I don't know. I really don't know. So I think it's kind of silly for us to be sitting here and saying, no tolls. I want to just keep it the way it is. Well, I'm not quite sure what we're talking about long term. The other issue is there's a lot of questions, and Mr. Riccio has every right to ask any questions. There's tons of questions. Do state drivers get a discount? Do out-of-state drivers going to pay 40% of all the tolls? Will the gas tax be lowered once the tolls are enacted? Some states put tolls just on bridges. I know Governor Lamont has mentioned that. Will that be a viable option for Connecticut residents? I'm not sure. You know, I also heard that all the money that's actually generated by the toll money on the certain particular roads have to be earmarked for that particular road. I don't know if that's true or not. The fact of the matter is we don't get expert testimony here at the town council level. We don't know all the information. We don't get experts that come here, and certainly Governor Lamont's not coming to the Southington Town Council meeting to talk about his proposal. So let's talk about our role as a council person. You know, I talk about, someone talk about seniors and you know, young people. Well, let's just take this for something to think about. If you're an elderly person, let's say you don't drive, well, you're not going to pay any tolls. But let's say you're still drive, but you don't drive far. My parents don't really get on the interstate and drive far. Fact of the matter is, under the status quo plan, they're still going to be paying for all those roads that they never drive on, because they're going to still continue to pay the gas tax, which probably might have to be increased. I don't know if it will. And like I said, I don't know what's true and what's not true. But the fact of the matter is, status quo is people that don't drive or elderly people that don't use cars are still going to be impacted because the state is going to be paying for all these projects. And I think that's a concern that maybe should be talked about. You know, this whole conversation is important because it's okay to talk about state issues. I can talk about any state issue. I'm not voting the motion by Mr. Lombardi to put this on the agenda for action because I'm not going to fall for the trap. I'm not going to play that trap where then you can say that I'm for tolls. I don't know if I'm for tolls. Okay, the
Excuse
fact
me,
of the matter
remember-
is, I heard that Connecticut Business and Industrial Association, CBIA, has actually endorsed tolls. Now, I don't know if that's true. I didn't hear anyone from CBIA. Maybe they don't. Maybe they do. I don't know. But there is so much information out there that we don't have the answers to. And I want to just say to all my colleagues, I don't go after anyone how they feed their family. I don't scoop that low, okay? What I do is legal. My job is legal. It's allowed. And for anyone to imply otherwise is not fair to me or any public servant. And I think that was a new low to go after how I feed my family. And I have to say, I respect all my colleagues, but some things are just not right. And the fact of the matter is, I'm my own person. And I work hard at my job. And I don't owe anyone anything. And the fact of the matter is I appreciate the work of all the legislators, Republican and Democrat. And I don't get into the politics up at the Capitol, but the fact of the matter is there's a lot of good people on both sides of the aisle. And however this plays out with tolls, it plays out. It's not the role of the Southington Town Council to get into if we should have tolls or we shouldn't have tolls.
Madam Clerk, I'm going to ask you to call the roll for this vote. I'm calling for a vote, please.
To put on the agenda.
To put it on the agenda.
Mr. Palmieri, before you call the roll, I just have to, there was a discussion open, I didn't have a chance to comment.
Okay, go ahead, Mr. Riccio.
So I think that the issue arises is that it's gotten to this level because it's layer after layer after layer at the state level, and the town, and at the local level, people are just fed up. I had a very, very close friend who retired as a director level from the Department of Transportation. When he retired, he had 3 secretaries, 3 women. Did he need 3? No. He said he barely even needed 1. He had 3 because it was a union issue, because there was no one checking what was going on over there. And so 3 women got paid to work for 1 guy, 2 played solitaire all day, and 1 did what he needed to do. That's the issue, the underlying issue. We have a Department of Motor Vehicles that employs thousands of people. It can all be done on this. But you have to go to the office and stand in line for 100 hours to register your car, and in some states, it's done on your cell phone. None of that's being addressed at Hartford. We have Dave Zoney sitting right here in the front row. Came to the town of Southington and was running for election. Gave us a check for $5 or $10 million for the calendar house after the taxpayers of the town of Southington voted to pay to build a new calendar house. And he did it with, I think, with the Speaker of the House. Did I vote for it? Absolutely. Everybody here probably voted for it if you were sitting here. That stuff comes. Sloper's Pond. I love Sloper's Pond. I grew up there. Dredging Sloper's Pond. It's all these things. We talked about bonding cap. The bonding cap has exploded because every 2 years when state representatives run for election, they show up waving checks to save the day for some project in Southington. That's not what taxpayer money's for, people. That's not what the taxpayer money's for. And so, of course, the state budget has gone way out of control so we can just keep electing people every 2 years.
Okay, I do.
And now we're at a point where we got to tax something else to pay for our roads when we already have all these taxes that were put in place years ago to pay for the roads.
Okay, one last thing. I appreciate everyone's patience and being here tonight. But the Republicans, obviously this is what's happening right now, is that they ran this town, every board and commission for 8 years. For Board of Finance supermajority, council supermajority. They talk about taxes. I see the sign here, taxes are too high. I'll tell you what, under Republican control in this town, in 8 years, $20 million in new spending. Our increase to our mill rate, 25%. So please, I'm so sick of this rhetoric. I'm
Those
so
aren't true numbers.
tired of it. You
Not
go
true numbers.
after the
Okay.
state
Not
and
true.
your
All right,
rhetoric doesn't match
excuse
your
me,
actions.
excuse
That's
me.
not true.
I'm calling for a vote at this time. It's getting to a disrespectful level again. Madam Clerk, please call the roll. I want to remind everyone, the vote is to put this on the agenda or not put it on the agenda. Madam Clerk, please call the roll.
Ricchio.
Yes.
Triano.
Yes.
Barry.
No.
Diedzik.
Yes.
Lombardi.
Yes.
Maselli.
No.
Morrissey.
No.
Pulis.
It's a complicated matter. We don't have enough information. No.
Palmieri.
No. Okay, moving on to report of special committees. First committee this evening is the Apple Harvest Committee. We are now seeking, and the RFP is available on the town website if anyone's interested. We're looking for the temporary trash and dumpster proposals, so please, if anyone is interested, the RFP is available on the town website. I'd encourage you to apply to that. We've also continued to receive sponsorship commitments. To date, we have $27,500 in commitments for sponsorships. And other than that, all the applications are available and everything is now posted on the town website. Are there any questions related to the Apple Harvest Festival Committee? Okay, self-insurance, I'll turn it over to Mr. Poulos.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The Self-Insurance Committee met again on March 20th. This was our last meeting before the Board of Finance will meet this week. There are 2 items to report regarding our meeting. First, the claims for fiscal year 18-19 are under budget by $406,000. While we expect claims to pick up as participants meet their deductibles through June, overall, our consultant says we're in good shape for the year. Number 2, we also reviewed the projections for the level of funding for fiscal year 19 and 20. Initially, we budgeted $24.9 million for the self-insurance line. Based on available data through February, that was the most up-to-date data we had, the committee voted to reduce the funding level by $900,000 to an even $24 million. Mr. Lombardi, do you have anything to add from self-insurance? I know you were there.
Did you mention what the number was from the consultant? Joe Spurgeon? It was 23.8.
23.8 was the consultant projection, and we went 200,000 above that.
Right. I think that's it. It was a good discussion. Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions for self-insurance? Okay, Sewer Committee, Mr. Zoni? Nothing to report. Great. Okay, so that completes our committee reports. Moving on to town manager's report and communication.
Thank
Mr.
you,
Manager?
Mr. Chairman, I'm going to try and be brief tonight. As you know, the MERS issue has something, has us all wondering where that's going to head. So I did add $600,000 to my budget, as you know, to cover the MERS costs for the town. I am happy to say, I don't know how far it's going to get, but I'm happy to say that the governor put a bill in which would share some of the pain between not only the town but the employees. So I think that, as you will see, I put a letter in for testimony, doing a little bit different because the town has 5 years to make our payments to get to the point where the state wants to be. My suggestion was we do the same thing with the employees. Like I said, I don't know how far it's going to get. I know the superintendent and I both put testimony in, along with the business manager from the Board of Education. Several managers and first selectmen have put it in also. As you know, the issue with MERS is not going to go away. It's our only hope that the employees, such as myself, share in the burden with the taxpayers on how we handle the MERS program. So, any questions on that?
Okay.
The second item is something that we come to you every spring on. I know that Mr. Berry's board has already covered a lot of these things, but these are the road projects we plan on moving forward with. I did receive some questions on cost breakdowns, so I did have the town engineer do another addendum on the cost breakdowns on the different systems. So as you will see, that the systems that we used 3 years ago and last year are not part of our program for this particular year. I know she's been sitting there for the last couple hours. If you have any questions, the town engineer is here. She's been hiding in back, but if there's no further questions on that, Mr. Chairman, then what I will ask is that the real estate matter be removed, and I will have a very brief executive session on contractual matters for you.
Okay, thank you very much, and there will be no action outside of
No
executive
action,
session?
no.
Thank you. Moving on to the town attorney's report.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just briefly, there is an item on for action tonight. It involves a referral under 824, which I report on often, but just to remind the board, 824 is a Connecticut general statute that requires the town council to refer certain matters, including this one, because it does involve the acquisition of land, to the Planning and Zoning Commission for a report back. This is the acquisition of 2 parcels of property. One is located at 156 Woodruff Street, the rear lot. The other one is 900 South Main Street. The owners of those property are willing to convey those properties to the town in lieu of current tax liabilities, which are relatively small. One is $1,061.35. That's for the Woodruff Street one. And the South Main Street one is $1,247.28.
Okay.
Any questions?
Anything for the town attorney? Mr. Lombardi?
I may have missed it, but where's the details on the 900 South Main Street? I do recall discussing the Woodruff Street one, and I initially had an issue with it, and then we discussed it, and now I'm okay with it. But where's the, did I miss it?
I'm sorry, in your last meeting, the packet
Yep.
had the map plus the owner's sheet on it. This one simply, as I mentioned, we need to get the MOUs, the members' understanding, so we got it for this meeting, but it's in your last meeting's packet. I'll be happy to send it to you.
And can you explain what the property is and why we find it valuable to obtain this property?
I can't speak to the value per se. I can say that in these instances where the owner doesn't see fit to continue paying taxes, what we would normally do is refer that out to a sheriff's tax sale, which can cost the town legal dollars to expend to collect those taxes, since it's a relatively small tax liability. They're just offering to convey the land back, which in
Right.
often circumstances, the town would take it back anyways through that.
Yeah, I think
Right,
it's
and I just want to make it clear that
important to hear from
I
the
don't
Open
want to
Space
just
Committee.
accept land just because someone can't pay their taxes. I want to make sure there's a value that we see.
That's why these go to the Open Space
Okay.
Committee for them to look at.
And
So
I
both
apologize
of
that I
these-
missed this. I don't know why I didn't see.
On the last meeting was a little bit interesting, but yeah, I brought this up under my report at the last meeting, and these were both in there. And you asked that same question, and I mentioned to you that both of these parcels, we, staff as well as the committee, felt that for this amount of money, it was worth putting in the town coffers. The other one, the Woodruff Street, was more obvious because we were hoping to use it possibly to help us out in that area. There's no guarantees. This one here was also discussed. It's something we want in the town coffers.
Thank you.
And of course, it goes to planning and zoning. If they don't feel that it's something, then they send it back to you.
And then
So
it
that-
comes back to us.
Comes back to you for a final vote, yes.
Any other questions, Ms. Lombardi?
No, I don't know if
Okay.
Councilwoman Maselli was
Well,
gonna
I
say
was just going to
something?
say, with regard to 900 South Main Street, actually, we don't think it should go into open space coffers. It was more about where that property is. It's got a couple of easements on it and some wetlands as well, and there's nothing that can ever be built on that property and that sort of thing. But because of its placement on South Main Street, we felt like it was important for $1,000 to have that in our coffers. But it's not technically open space. We won't consider it as such.
Thank you.
That's on the second title, land acquisition, open space and land acquisition. That's
Right,
the second
right.
title. You don't put that on your card, do you? Just have open space on your card, should be good.
Well, and Mr. Curtis calls it green space, and I actually agree with him. Some things are open space and some are just green space, if you will.
Okay. And no other questions for the town attorney? All right, so we are at public communication. The microphone is open to any resident. Please just begin by stating your name and address for the record, and I'd ask residents to limit their comments to 5 minutes, please.
My name is Pamela J. DiPaolo. I live at 54 Delahunty Drive in Southington. And good evening, Chairman Palmieri, Town Council members. 2 weeks ago, during the week of March 11th, 2019, I was able to obtain a Baldwin small upright piano in excellent condition, which was in the possession of a local Southington resident. Rather than keep the piano for myself, although I really would have loved to have done so, since it is a top-notch piano, I decided to donate the piano to the town of Southington's public education system, with the DePaulo Middle School my choice of schools to donate it to. The piano has a beautiful mahogany wood case and just needs a tuning, but otherwise the 30-year-old plus instrument will be an unexpected and much-needed addition to the school's music department. If it were purchased new, this piano would be valued at about $6,000 or $7,000. In its present condition, which is practically pristine, its value is at least $3,000 to $4,000. The town and the middle school would have been hard put to find an instrument in such excellent condition. The previous owner of the piano wishes not to be acknowledged, but without her notifying me that it was available, this gift to DePaulo Middle School would not have been possible. More importantly than the actual dollar value of this piano is the use it will have for so many fine and talented music students and the enhancement it will provide to Patty Altieri and the music directors at the school and their concerts to give their students a better music education with such a fine piano to accompany them in their practice and in their concerts. I hope that the school will make great use of the piano, and I am sure that they will take good care of it, because the piano will be very beneficial for many years to come for our homegrown students of music. I appreciate this opportunity to assist the Southington Public School System in gaining a valuable tool for learning and musical development for our young artists as they pursue their lessons and strive to become proficient musicians. Students who do not have an access to a piano at home will have more of an opportunity to become interested in the piano and to put music development more into the forefront of their studies, because this beautiful instrument is now available to them. I would like to thank Chris Palmieri of the DePaulo Middle School for his assistance and cooperation in helping me coordinate the delivery of the piano to the school, and also for helping obtain a small amount to help with the delivery cost for our movers to bring the piano in our DePaulo furniture trucks to the school. I sincerely hope that all the present and future DePaulo Middle School music students will take full advantage of their new piano, and that it will help them in their music studies and encourage them to spend more time practicing. Best of luck to Patty Altieri and the music personnel at the school in all of their music presentations. I will continue to work with Patty as much as possible to offer my assistance in whatever way possible to enhance and improve the music department at the school and their programs. Thank you.
Thank you.
And may I just add, Ms. DiPaolo, that the Baldwin stand is a fabulous brand versus, I grew up on a Kimball. I always wanted a Baldwin, so it's just wonderful. Thank you.
Please,
Kimball,
please.
Thank you.
Exactly.
Karen
That's a
Leary, 244 Hart Street. I am the current chair of the Commission on Disabilities. I'm joined by two of our other commissioners.
Mary Etter, 15 Fenwood Road.
George Poharlak, 1297 East Street.
And we are here tonight to invite you to our upcoming educational event that we have annually. It is the second annual Ann Dandro Memorial Educational Event. It is going to be held on April 2nd from 6 to 8 p.m. at Hawks Landing. Admission is free. There will be over 20 representatives from vendors and organizations that support the needs of individuals with disabilities. Refreshments will be served. There will be a few breakout sessions where additional information on topics will be provided to those attending, and we hope that you can attend. I have some flyers that I'm just going to give to Councilor Lombardi, and he can pass them along.
Absolutely.
So thank you, and we look forward to seeing you there, as well as many members of the public as possible. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr.
Thanks
Chairman,
for
just-
hosting that.
Yeah, just quickly, I just would say Anne would love this. You know, she was so connected to the heart of the community And of course, special needs was a very dear part of her love for the town and the individuals that needed that little extra help. I can't wait to go. I think it's going to be great.
Thank you. We had the honor of, having her family present last year. They have been invited, but we did, make a special presentation, as last year was the first Ann Dandro Memorial event. So some members of the family may be there. I haven't heard back from them yet, but thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Thank you. Any other members of the public that would like to speak?
Carmelia Kimmel, 1067 Woodruff Street. This was probably one of the most rousing meetings I've ever attended, and I appreciate everyone who gave their input into this meeting as one of the citizens of Southington and of the state of Connecticut. I am a senior. You might say I'm a senior. I do remember quite a lot of what's gone on in Connecticut, even though I am a senior. One of the things I am concerned about is that senior citizens are not going to be represented at the state level. If you consider that, yes, a lot of us won't be driving by the time the tolls come into effect, but we'll be doing Uber to get to our doctor in Hartford, and they certainly aren't going to pay the toll. And just extending from that, you can imagine what other tolls seniors are going to have to pay just because we're not going to be able to take those back roads that we know about to get to up the length of 84 or down to New Haven. That's just one thing. Another thing was I cannot believe the lack of understanding of some of our local elected politicians of some of the things that have happened. I mean, you guys have to look at the history of what's gone on in this state. The Miamis River Bridge did not come down because we didn't have enough money to pay to repair it. There was plenty of funds at that time to pay for that bridge before it came down. It was just a bunch of lazy spotters who did not give honest reports as to the condition of that bridge, and that's the only reason why that bridge came down. That really hurt because it was a very emotional time for that bridge to come down. Also, the cost of redoing our roads, whether it be in Southington or be on the state level, I think is another thing that we should all look at as politicians, whether we're here in this town or at the state level. We should be looking at what it costs to build 1 mile of blacktop in the state of Connecticut compared to any other state in the United States, and what it cost us to build it here in Connecticut. That roundabout that Mr. Malloy, or Governor now, Lamont, Governor Lamont just talked about, the cost of that is 4 times as much as it costs to do it in any other state. Why? That's something we should be protesting about. Don't let them get away with it. One thing I appreciate is the beautiful condition of most of the roads here in Southington. When we moved here 57 years ago, wait a minute, 55 years ago, excuse me, the roads were in pretty good shape. And over those 55 years, nothing was done. And it's only been in the past 10 years that our roads have been approached to be repaired. Now, I just happen to live on a street that begins with a W, so we're kind of like at the bottom of the list. Although I think we're going to go to the top of the list after you go down and see what happened from the downpour into the wetlands onto our property. When you see what how the road has just degraded in the past 2 rainstorms. You have to swerve around them to get down our street without going into a hole. And it's always that one spot. You used to be able to come out and, with the street sweeper, cover it all up. You can't do that anymore. The conditions just won't allow it. Okay, I guess that's all I have to say. Thank you for letting me talk.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good evening. David Riccio, 50 South Center Street. I have a concern, and I've spoken to Vicki and my brother about this. Southington's gotten big, and as Southington's grown, it's not the Southington that we grew up in, where people tend to obey the speed limits. On South Center Street, when I was a kid growing up in my grandparents' house, the speed limit on that street was 25. I currently have Southington Police Department sitting in my driveway, pretty much on a daily basis. We have the rails to trails. Last summer, we had 2 accidents, I believe 1 fatality at Bristol Street and West Street. Something needs to be done with that section between High Street and Bristol Street. The speed that these cars travel down that road is outrageous. Sometimes, being a truck driver, you gauge the speed. I've seen trucks trucks and cars 55, 60. And if it's late at night after the bars get out, they're gone straight down Bristol Street, or they take a right and go up West Center Street. And it's me, myself, I like to back into my driveway. I've gotten to the point where I've almost been hit 6 times. And it's not so much they want to hit my truck, by all means hit it. I'll get a new truck. It's the mothers and the fathers that are getting out of the cars with these little kids. And any of us that have had kids, what do? They want to go. Those are the people that I'm afraid of. I would like to see, I don't know if it's the council that's in charge of it or the police department, but I would like to see crosswalk signs that flash, that at least alert the drivers that are flying around the corners, that you have pedestrians. And because one of these days, someone's going to get hit, and it's going to be a child. And I just lost a friend of mine today because of speed on State Road 34 in Orange.
Sorry.
And it was because, I'm going to guess it was probably because of speed, because of where they got hit. And you don't, no matter how, it doesn't matter how fast you go, you're not going to get there any faster. He could probably attest to it, Jack, being a company owner. You take your time, you're gonna get there. I mean, it's just, I don't want to get hit, and I don't want to see people get hit. So I don't know if there's something that maybe y'all can do, or if I have to go to the police department and talk to Officer Schneider, I'll do that.
So if I can ask the town manager to report this to the police chief, and then if I could ask someone from the police department to reach out to Mr. Ricchio.
Yeah, I just took the notes on that. It'd be, I'll talk to the chief tomorrow.
So we'll have someone get in touch with you directly from the
Alright.
police department.
I mean, I've been in contact with a lot of the guys already at the department, but I just wanted to bring it forward to the town because we all, you know, speed every once in a while. And I even told the cops, you might catch me coming around the corner one day, you know?
Mhm.
It's the point.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Dave.
So we'll look into it for you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other resident that would like to speak? Mr. Fischello, and I please would like to remind you, limit your comments to 5 minutes, please. We let you speak every meeting.
My name is Hilly Voshil, 82. I don't know. I've been here over 40 years, over 40 years. And I just wonder, it's a joke. Somebody speak so much, they don't understand what I mean. And I give so many people. You know what, I know long ago. But I think the lady to the Council Toyano, she explained exactly. And so the manager, I sat down with him long ago, and I explained, and he lied, and he lied, and those are the lie they have in command. I don't understand the way the logic is. I follow psychology. And when I went to do everything he said, do this, do this, I give you the paper. I'm now coming here a lie. I spent $1,000 of dollars, a little bit of money that I made. I hope you understand.
Thank you. Here, I'll pass them down for you,
Someday.
so you could keep talking.
Well, because here is when I cleaned the road, 2 roads I cleaned. They were my children here, 7, 8 years old. I worked like a jackass. And then you told me the best things.
Thank you. Thank you. There you go.
Councilor John Barry, Madame Mitchell, and everybody else, they do not understand what I'm talking about. There was only $60,000. And the lawyer, the manager said one time when I went to town hall, your lawyer do not understand. He do not know what a road means. That's because only 3-4 people knew what was happening. And they kept everybody else in the dark. And they started stealing the road. Once again, to everyone because they didn't want. Now, after he lied like hell, and the town approved it. Chairman me knows it so well. I've been like, I might know somebody, maybe this guy, the other woman, the other one, understand and do something about it. But you know what? I know one thing, that people like me, immigrant, you put them like this. Then you cut, and you suck the blood. Think I'm stupid? I spent 23 years with the Lord. That's around.
Yes, thank you.
I see how the manager, Mr. Mead, stole my property. Because they stole. When there was a gentleman, De La Vida, Al De La Vida, chairman, about 972, I mailed there, I said, Al, they are stealing my property. He said, Delio, don't you worry about, they will do what I promised you. What a joke. Look here, I give this to the lawyer because I went to Haven one time. And one the lawyer asked me for this. how they do this. You know all about. I just want to answer the thing. I'm here 42 years, and you tell me, Mr. Lester says, I don't know what I'm talking about. He thank you, Michael Shaw, the lawyer, at one time, many years ago, as a manager. I don't know what I'm talking about. Nobody ever come to me and say, how they steal this property? But you want the taxes. You ought to be shame yourself for those that do not consider such a thing. But there's no shame here. That's why I bring the flag here, because I tried to come late. They said, because you lied to Christ and the flag. These are the lot.
Okay, Mr. Fischello. Thank you.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Fischello.
I want an answer
Mr. Fischello,
complete,
I allow,
because I don't want to die
Mr.
inside
Fischello,
the-
please,
You know,
please,
all you think about
you've
is-
had your 5 minutes.
I got here, what
Mr.
time?
Fischello,
I want an answer, Mr. Chairman.
you've had your 5 minutes. We've given you an answer. We're moving on. Is there anyone else that would like to speak?
Explain exactly
Please, come on up. Mr. Fischello, please take your stuff. We have another resident that would like to speak. Thank you.
Let somebody else come. I'm here. I want an answer.
Thank you, Mr. Fischello.
That's all you see. You put the gun on the people's head. That's all.
Dawn has something to say.
You need only the left to the wall.
Mr. Fischello, please, we've given you your 5 minutes at every meeting. Please move on. There's another resident that would like to speak. Thank you.
Speak, but I want an answer to you. I'm saying.
Go ahead. This is not a back and forth conversation.
Listen, Mr. I'm not.
Mr. Fischello.
I spent 22
Mr.
years
Fischello, I'm not,
No, you just want to keep it down.
Mr. Fischello, you're out of order. Please step away from the microphone and allow the next resident to speak.
You stealing. You stealing. A lie.
Mr. Fischello,
Elio, it's been a long night, please, have a seat.
22 years he carried the flag. I had a lot of gentlemen teaching me how to do things.
thank you, Mr. Fischello.
Thank you. I want an answer, Mr. You are so dishonest. Even God run away. Listen, wait. We already spoke about.
Thank you.
That's okay. Come on up and speak, because Mike can get the keys.
Brian Gaylord, 900 South Main Street. I did look on the map, there's two 900 South Main Street, so it's not the piece of property you guys are
Okay.
taking.
Thank you.
And it is a hole, that's a swamp, so there is really no use for that piece of property. I'm not here because of that, it just happened to be, I didn't realize it was on the agenda.
Okay.
And then another thing that was talked about, which I wasn't planning on saying, I didn't realize it was going to be on here, was they keep talking about large trucks, and there's a lot of, there's a small bit of misinformation out there that's no one seems to be presenting. Every large truck that does come into the state of Connecticut legally does pay for the miles that they drive on average. So they're paying their Connecticut gas tax per gallon. They may not be buying it in Connecticut, but wherever they're buying it, either they're writing a check to the state of Connecticut, or the state they bought their fuel in is writing the state of Connecticut a check. And every large truck does pay a registration per mile in the state of Connecticut for every mile they drive, the same percentage. So right now, for me to operate my truck just in Connecticut and Massachusetts alone, just for my license plate, is almost $3,500 a year. So there is a large cost. You know, it's not just a gas tax. They get their registration. So, but that wasn't the reason why I came to the meeting tonight. One of the first reason I came was us having to pay for the additional retirement for the state, you know, for the town employees of the state. We should pass on some of the costs more than what the state is saying us to pass on, because when you're doing your budget, an employee wants X amount of dollars per hour, so you figure all the cost in there, his retirement, whatever he gets. So now the town is being asked to contribute even more, but without us holding some of their money back in future pay raises, it's like we've given them a pay raise. I know it's not a pay raise in their check, but it was a cost that we weren't planning on incurring. And now, unless we back it out at some point on what it's costing us, I don't know if this is gonna be a one-time cycle of money, or if it's gonna be a continuous every year. They're gonna want us to keep on giving more and more money, but somewhere along the line, one of these contracts, the hourly rate should be adjusted for all these employees that we have to pay additional money for the pension. It's part of their money that we were used as a cost, basing on their salary. You know, it's not in their pocket, but it is a cost that incurred by the town of Southington residents, which we shouldn't have to pay again to give them a pay raise, which is what it is. It's not a pay raise in their check, but it's a pay raise that they're receiving somewhere along the line. Second thing is, I've been asking before for, walk to the parking lot again tonight, 2 town cars out there with no town seal on the door. I don't know if, you know, why we can't buy seals. I asked for GPS on the town vehicles. That seems like that goes nowhere. I don't know, I drive around town vehicles and they're sitting in parking lots, killing time. They're driving around at the end of the day so they don't have to go back to the location where they come out of to kill time, to make sure they get enough time in for the day. That's a little ludicrous for the amount of money we pay. We should know where every town vehicle is at all times. I understand there's certain departments, I'm not mentioning any names, that it might be a little confidential where they are, but majority of the vehicles in the town of Southington, we should know, as a taxpayer, as a person running that department, should know where that vehicle is at all times. It shouldn't be behind some building where the guys are eating their lunch or something. I don't know how long they're there for. We got snowstorms. We got millions of dollars worth of snow equipment sitting at the town garage because the guys are in there sleeping. We should be utilizing. No one knows how much this stuff is being utilized without actual tracking of the vehicles. So unless we start actual tracking, we don't know what we're spending. Each plow truck is costing us over $200,000, and it's sitting at the town garage, getting snowed on, and it's not being used. That doesn't seem like a good way of spending money. Let's put GPS, let's see how much this stuff is being used and how much is not being used. And then back to the Curtis Street property, not Curtis Street, but the Curtis Farm property. Before a couple years, there's a regulation, 817, state regulation for building codes. It's about page 6 in there. There's a wording in there called structures. And apparently on the deed, there's something about no structures being built on the property. Well, in that state code book, under the 817 code book, a structure is considered like a manhole. Gives a whole list. It's not a house. So the state code book calls a manhole a structure. So if that's in his deed where there's no structures, then there's no structures. And that's what the code book calls for. So if people can look at that code book and see what it says there, it's like page 6, under classification of structures, and that's one of them. So I don't know where we buy a piece of property, promise somebody something, and he really can't change his mind, because that was a contract.
If you could just finish up, just
Yeah.
because, and we are looking into that issue.
Because it was, you can't just suddenly change your mind about, I know it's his piece of property, he sold it, but he did sell it, so someone decides 10 years down the road, town comes, approaches them, and then now they can change their opinion. It was sold. It works both ways on that. He can't change his opinion once he signs the contract, so let's make sure that we're doing everything legal on that deal right there. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone is still open.
Hi, Sue Zabahansky, 28 Working Street. I just wanted to thank Councilman Tom Lombardi for bringing the toll issue to the council, because it is a political thing, as was mentioned by Councilman Barry. It's a political thing in that you guys are here to represent the voice of the Southington people. And when you have this many people coming together to protest something, I think it's important that the council recognizes it, even though it's a state level issue. We have to start somewhere with something as important as more taxes, which is basically what this is. And we know the gas tax is not going to go down. I mean, let's just face it. So I don't even know, the investigation of tolls, it needs to be done. I mean, it was brought up, we don't know enough. Yeah, we don't know enough. So why is it even being brought up at the state level when there's not enough information to provide the people? So I think to say no to a proposal coming is fine until there's more information on the table. So I appreciate that he stuck his neck out and was accused of it being a Republican Democrat thing, when really it is a political thing. The voice of the people of Southington need to be heard. And on any issue, as you said, if the people are coming to you with an issue, whether it be legalizing marijuana or tolls, I mean, when there's enough people, you need to listen and then recognize that. And it has to start somewhere. Yes, this hasn't been done in many many towns, but it's okay for Southington to be a leader in that. So that's what I wanted to thank. I wanted to thank you for bringing that.
Thank you. Any other residents that would like to speak? Okay, so
Mr. Chairman, this is a little off. I apologize because it's late too, but,
let me just close public communication
sorry, I'm
and
sorry.
go ahead, Mr.
Yep, yep.
Ricchio.
All set?
Yes.
So, Mr. Fischillo said he wants to bring this to an end. I think it's time. We got a letter in the last council meeting, and we can discuss this at a future meeting, but I'd like to have it put on the agenda. We got a letter that I'd never seen in 25 years of sitting up here, however long I've been here, that in 1993, his attorney asked for 1 or 2 building lots. And then that was at the last meeting, and I don't know, do we have all those?
It was sent out to every council person.
It came. Okay, so I think, and I know I sent this around and I asked for no discussion via email because I think this is the right, obviously the place that it needs to take place, but I think the time's come. Mr. Fischillo is an amazing man. I mean, he's the American dream and he's the nicest guy in the world. But when it comes to this topic, he's gonna have a heart attack here one night. I'm telling you, he's gonna have a heart attack. It's gonna be on us. It's over. He asked for 2 lots. And then in the late 90s, I don't know the exact year, we gave him 2 lots. For whatever reason, it's not good enough for him. I don't know what the reason is. I don't care anymore. He's going to have a heart attack. He calls all of us liars. He calls the town attorney a liar, or the town manager. All past chairmen are all liars. He hands out this pair. He's killed 5,000 trees to come here every 2 weeks. We need to have a resolution. He can come and talk on anything, but if he talks about that, there needs to be stiff consequences. And I'm sorry to say it, but he needs to be told, if you speak on this topic again, you will be arrested. I'm sure the public hates to hear that, but it has to be drastic. We can't go on like this anymore. This is crazy. This has been going on for over 35 years. At some point, it's got to end.
I understand, Mike. Go ahead, Tom, and
Thank
then
you.
I'll make my comment.
No resolution, Mr. Ricchio. That's all.
No resolution.
But I was going to say, if the chairman does decide to add this issue on the agenda, I would just ask that we reach out to his family to get
Absolutely.
his son or
Absolutely.
That would be my only comment on it.
It can't.
'Cause
It can't go on
He
anymore.
continually says that he wants a vote. He wants a vote.
He got his vote, he got his justice, he got his lots, he got everything he asked for.
And again, it goes back 20 years, council after council after council, with planning and zoning, with town attorneys. This is nothing, and Mike, I mean, you personally have tried sitting down with him, reasoning with him.
Just
So
said
is the
tonight,
town
no one's
attorney,
gone
and-
to talk to him. That's a lie. That's a lie. I mean, he talks about lies. That's a lie.
What's that?
He says nobody's gone to talk to him.
I defended you in the past meeting,
Yes,
saying
I know,
that's
me and
not
100 other people.
But I'll discuss it more with the town manager, but again, I think we've done all these steps, and it's important for residents to know that we certainly have gone above and beyond, really, for him. And I don't mean just the 9 of us. I mean council before council before council, and town attorneys and
And
planning
you,
zoning.
Chris, you'll sleep better. Trust me. You're going to have a heart attack.
Thank you, Mr. Ricchio. Thank you for considering my well-being. All right, so we're moving
Thank you.
on to old business. Item A, action on the public hearing. Just looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make the motion to approve the 2019 Community Development Block Grant.
Okay, we have a motion to approve, and we have a second. Good. Any other discussion? Ms. Trano. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Okay, that passes unanimously. Thank you. Next is action on the 824 referrals for 900 South Main Street and 154 Woodruff Street. Looking for a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I'll make that motion.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right, thank you very much. New business, item A, tax refunds, Mr. Dietzick.
Oh, sorry.
I'll make a motion to approve the tax refunds as itemized in the town council packet.
Okay, we have a motion to approve. Is there a second?
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? Okay, all those in favor? Aye. All right, the tax refunds are approved. And finally, I'm just looking for a motion, again, to remind the public, we have eliminated real estate. We will just be going into executive session for contractual matters, and it will include the town attorney and town manager.
I'll make that motion, Mr. Chair.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, so we are adjourned.
10 o'clock, yeah. Dawn, are you going or not?